Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. The European Union is hitting back after Trump administration steel and aluminum tariffs go into effect. A look at what goods will be affected by the new fees. President Trump defends his use of tariffs and says they could increase. We bring you takeaways from Trump's meeting with the CEOs of America's biggest companies. Defense officials from the Army, Air Force, and Navy are testifying on the current readiness of the joint force. We'll tune into that hearing.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good morning. Today is Wednesday, March 12th. I'm Don Ma. For the first time in 4 months, inflation in the U.S. cooled off. Economists say lower gas and grocery prices were major factors that helped bring down inflation. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says the consumer price index was 2.8% for the year that ended in February. It's down from the 3% yearly rate reported in January. Two sides now finding middle ground. President Trump halts his plan to double metal tariffs on Canada after Ontario stops its plan to charge extra for electricity into the U.S. NTD's Iris Tao has the latest back and forth amid market concerns.
White House announced that President Trump is dropping his new threat to double his tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%. And the latest moves comes after Ontario says it's now suspending its surcharge to electricity exports to the U.S. amid Trump's threats. And meanwhile, it comes as the two sides are now going to come together in Washington to discuss a renewed USMCA deal amid, of course, everything that's unfolding when it comes to trade. The White House did say, though, that Trump's original plan of slapping a 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum coming in from all trading partners will still kick in on Wednesday. And President Trump, speaking to a group of business CEOs, doubled down on his approach to tariffs. Watch.
Biggest win is if they move into our country and produce jobs. That's a bigger win than the tariffs themselves. But the tariffs are going to be throwing off a lot of money to this country. And we've been ripped off for years by other countries, many, many decades.
And Senate Majority Leader John Thune saying that while he backs Trump's tariffs, he hopes that they're temporary. Watch.
I hope these are temporary. I think the one thing that markets don't like is uncertainty. And there's obviously uncertainty, I think, around that tariff policy.
But President Trump brushing off concerns about market reaction, saying that stocks go up and down, but we have to save our country.
Our country had to do this. We had to go and do this. They've taken away, other countries have taken away our business. They've taken away our jobs.
And keep in mind, Trump's reciprocal tariffs on all trading partners are still set to kick in on April 2nd, which is just 3 weeks away.
The European Union announced new tariffs on U.S. industrial and agricultural products today. The move comes within hours of the Trump administration's 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports taking effect. The EU measures will apply to goods worth approximately $28 billion. They will affect not only steel and aluminum, but also textiles, home appliances, and agricultural products. Among these specific items targeted are motorcycles, bourbon, peanut butter, and jeans. The tariffs primarily target Republican states, hitting soybeans in House Speaker Mike Johnson's Louisiana. They will also affect beef and poultry in Kansas and Nebraska. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized the EU remains open to negotiation. President Trump dismissed concerns of a potential recession yesterday, insisting that the economy remains strong. He cited growth in what he called the real jobs and the return of manufacturing to the U.S. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on Trump's remarks and a new confirmed White House visit.
The president spoke outside the south portico of the White House, flanked by new Tesla vehicles and advisor Elon Musk.
Do you think there will be a recession?
I don't see it at all. I think this country is going to boom.
Trump described recent market volatility as part of an ongoing economic overhaul, downplaying concerns over instability.
As I said, I can do it the easy way or the hard way. The hard way to do it is exactly what I'm doing, but the results are going to be 20 times greater.
The president believes the future economy will be built on more solid ground.
I think we're going to have an economy that's a real economy, not a fake economy.
Trump argued that an economy dependent on government jobs is unsustainable and praised recent private sector job growth.
That's going to continue. Those are real jobs. Those are jobs that keep the country going. You can't have all government jobs. You have no income to pay the workers.
Markets have taken a hit in recent weeks. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down more than 7% in the past month. The S&P 500 has declined over 8%. The Nasdaq has dropped by more than 11%. Approximately $4 trillion in market value has been erased in the same period. Cryptocurrencies have also suffered, with Bitcoin down nearly 16% and Ethereum dropping more than 28%. Amid growing financial anxiety, the White House defended Trump's economic policies. It said current market turmoil is temporary and part of a transition from Biden-era policies. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt emphasized that deregulation, tax cuts, and manufacturing revitalization will lead to long-term gains.
As the president has said over and over again, when we purchase products made in the USA, the profits stay here, the revenue stays here, and most importantly, the jobs stay here.
Leavitt accused what she called the globalist mainstream media of attempting to inspire fear in consumers.
President Trump will not repeat the trend of past American presidents who broke their promises to the American public and smiled while they stuck a knife in the back of American workers and shipped their jobs overseas.
Trump's trade policies have been cited as contributing to a decline in consumer confidence, which had surged following his election on hopes of pro-business reforms. The Philadelphia Eagles will visit the White House to celebrate their Super Bowl victory. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed the news on Tuesday.
I know there was a lot of fake news about an invitation that wasn't sent or was sent. We want to correct the record. We sent an invitation. They enthusiastically accepted, and you will see them here on April 28th.
The Eagles didn't visit the White House after they won the Super Bowl in 2018. President Trump confirmed Tuesday that Ukrainian President Zelensky is welcome back at the White House. The two leaders clashed in a tense February 28th Oval Office meeting. The confirmation that Zelensky is welcome back at the White House came the same day Ukraine said it's open to a 30-day ceasefire if Russia agrees. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Here now to discuss the takeaways from President Trump's meeting with the CEOs of America's biggest companies is Mike Leon, an NTD News contributor and host of the podcast Can We Please Talk. Good morning, Mike. So give us your thoughts on yesterday's meeting where Trump defended his economic policies that, in part contributed to market volatility.
Hey, Don, good to see you first and foremost. Yeah, so first I would recommend people go watch, I believe it was about an 8 or 9 minute exchange that was open to the press before it was closed doors, and he met with about 100 top CEOs across a bunch of different companies. But my biggest takeaway is again, and he mentioned it in that 8 or 9 minute or so when he was answering the question, was really about tariffs. He feels that tariffs are going to be something that's going to get the economic boon returning to this country. President Trump feels that we've been taken advantage of for a long time. The Democrats, prior to this, President Biden kept some of the tariffs in place that Donald Trump had carried over from his first administration. He feels tariffs is a strategy, as business experts and business reporters who covered his first administration have told me on my show, Don. He feels like this isn't a strategy to get people to the negotiating table, or, as Caroline Leavitt said there in that package, to get companies to finally start building in America and not exporting a lot of their labor overseas. We'll see if the strategy pays off. Multiple people will tell you multiple things in different directions, but that was my biggest takeaway: is tariffs, tariffs, tariffs.
But do business leaders want to hear that from Trump? Because they do want stability, right? Especially in markets.
Yeah, I don't think they do, Don. I think they want a clear indication, and you were kind of mentioning before in that piece as well that Daniel just played there. It was mentioning about volatility, and then also like the way the market changes. They want stability in all this, right? So if a tariff is being imposed on something that's a major import of ours here, that's going to impact a huge industry, the CEO of that industry or a company in that industry is going to want to know about that, because that's going to affect his operating budget. That's going to affect his revenue projections for the year. all of that going forward. So I think from yesterday, and again, there's a lot of reports from people that were in the room saying that they didn't leave with some of the answers that they wanted from President Trump about the execution part of this, right? There's this short-term impact, and then there's like the long-term impact and strategy of this, right? And I think, again, as I've talked to people who have covered the first administration from a Treasury Secretary, economic perspective, they've all told me this is his negotiation strategy. He takes them on, he takes them off. He puts them up 5%, he brings them down 10%. It's a strategy that he tries to use to implore these leaders to meet with him and then figure out, what's the financial negotiation that they can come to from a settlement perspective. So that way, both countries, walk away saying, okay, we've got what we wanted in terms of a trade negotiation. And I think this is the strategy that he's employing, and we're going to see if it works out over the next, 6 to 8 months.
Did you feel any sense of damage control from Trump in yesterday's meeting, as well as in his remarks elsewhere? Because he seemed to downplay concerns about a recession after refusing to rule it out. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever downplay anything Donald Trump says. One of the things I learned, Don, from the first administration was, and this is when he had a different press secretary at the time, she was asked a question. He answered the question later on to reporters, and he told them, "Why are you asking her? Ask me. I'm telling you what you need to hear." And so I've always taken Donald Trump at his face value. I don't think he was downplaying anything. I think, like I said, I think he thinks that this is a tactic and a strategy that he can use to negotiate first with partners in North America like Canada and like Mexico. And he's mentioned it a couple times. He feels like the automotive industry, specifically, let's take, for example, Ford has a huge plant in Mexico City. He feels like it's incumbent upon Ford, an American car company, to come back to America and bring those jobs back to America. So he's using this tariffs as a strategy to get the business leaders in that industry to say, hey, listen, maybe we should start building back in America. But again, the problem is, and economists will tell you this, is that American labor is not cheap, and building things in America does cost, which is why we rely on these foreign trade partners, because they have cheaper labor that we can leverage, and then we can start to import the products here and sell them, and everybody can return on a path to profitability. So I think, to answer your question holistically, Don, I don't think Donald Trump is doing any damage control. I think this is his strategy, as has been told for people that worked in the previous administration that I happen to know that advised him on an economic front. This is the strategy he's going with. He thinks it'll bring people to the negotiating table. He thinks he'll get a better deal out of this going forward that will impact American workers and Americans overall.
So do you think, likely or not, the Business Roundtable yesterday, where he was meeting with CEOs, do you think that improved Trump's standing with the business leaders, keeping in mind that many of the CEOs that he was meeting with are actually concerned about those tariffs?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, that's going to be the biggest takeaway from this, right? Like, what do the CEOs go back to their SVPs, VPs, and people that are part of the C-suites at their companies? What are those CEOs going to tell them about what the president said, what they feel like they should forecast from a revenue projection, where they feel that they will be impacted by some of these tariffs? Will this impact the industry holistically? Will it impact the company? I think all of this is kind of like a domino effect, Don, right? So we're gonna have to wait to see, unfortunately, to see what happens over the next, I would say, 6 to 12 months, because what's going to happen now is, as the tariffs and, as of today, some tariffs took effect across a couple different countries, across a couple different industries affected. So once this starts to go into effect over the next 3 to 6 months, we'll see what this does in terms of trade and how it impacts and which industries it'll impact. We'll start to see the jobs reports numbers start to come out, and all of this will be a trickle down effect. And we'll see if, like, the tariff negotiation strategy that President Trump is employing is going to be one that is good. But I think right now the biggest takeaway will be, or at least what people will try to find out, is what those CEOs are thinking and what they're going to tell their executives over at their companies about what they should do. Should they stand pat? Should they move into a different area? Because they're hanging on what the president is saying, and it's incumbent upon them to find out, so that way they can relay that stuff to their workers, so they can relay that stuff to their shareholders, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a wait and see effect, unfortunately. But in the immediacy right now, Don, we want to find out the most information. I don't think the president gave one direction or the other. The actions have been speaking louder than the words, and that's been the actions on these tariffs across Canada, across Mexico, and obviously across China.
Okay, just one final question for you. I'm just thinking here, how might Trump's actions, impact his standing with Americans who voted for him on the economy? Because we're seeing a lot of turmoil right now.
Don, I'm so glad you brought this up. There was a recent CNN poll that just came out this morning that said that he had a 54% disapproval so far on his handling on this situation, specifically with respect to the economy. And this is something that just came out, but he still has a 46% approval number. And obviously he has a higher approval with respect to what he's done around immigration and his words and actions with respect to immigration, obviously, when he gave that semi-State of the Union the other day. So this is going to be the biggest thing. Like, exit polling all showed that the economy was the number one thing that everyone wanted President Trump to fix. They felt that we were heading in the wrong direction. President Biden had like a 38% approval on this. So everyone wants to see Donald Trump execute on the economic front, bring economic stability. His words right now are being taken in different directions with respects to tariffs. This is why I'm trying to explain to people. It's a strategy. Whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant, Don. The numbers are going to bear this out over the next 6 to 12 months. If we start to see job growth increase in different industries here in America, if we start to see some of these countries come to the negotiating table and rework some of the trade partnership agreements, all of that will net out over the next 6 to 12 months. And I would urge people to wait until then, and then we judge President Trump on whether or not the economy has started to actually go in the direction that he promised Americans, that he campaigned on.
Well, all right, Mike, great talking to you as always. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don.
Next, Ireland's Prime Minister is heading to Washington. President Trump will host Prime Minister Micheal Martin for the annual Shamrock ceremony today. It's a tradition dating back to 1952, where Ireland's Prime Minister, also called the Taoiseach, presents the president with a bowl of shamrocks for St. Patrick's Day. And on Capitol Hill, defense officials are testifying on the current state of readiness of the joint forces. We're tuning in now to the hearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee.
What we did in the Navy to break down the problem and understand what it takes to make a productive recruiter. So I think there's renewed focus and clarity on that. We've done the things General Mingus has described, where we've spread to zip codes to get every available person into the Navy, and we're ahead of goal. Right now, our projection was 12,000 contracted. We've contracted 14,000. We were supposed to have 12.2 thousand shipped. We've shipped 12.7 thousand. So we're ahead of goal. I'm very concerned about the CR and the impact on that machine and slowing it down. So for us, we want to maintain course and speed, accelerate, and bring in all the people we need to close down on our gaps at sea. CR makes that a little more challenging.
Great. I'm going to yield back to Senator Hirono. I'll get through this line of questioning. I do want to do a recognition, Admiral, to the sailors and Marines who have been deploying all over the world, and in the Red Sea in particular. Remarkable performance in terms of shooting down all the incoming missiles and drones at your ships. My understanding, it's the most combat that the Navy's undertaken in terms of serious missile threats to our ships since World War II, and you've done it incredibly well. So to all the sailors and Marines on those deployed ships for the great job they've done, thank you from the entire United States Senate. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I get that a full-year CR is going to present some very unique challenges for all of our services, including our Space Force. So we will do what we can to help you all. Admiral Kilby, I recognize the need to build a larger fleet. However, I have significant concerns about the Navy's basically dismal track record of maintaining ships and submarines in the current fleet. We consistently see delays, increased costs, ships without adequate crew, a lack of spare parts, and other issues. General Mahoney, it seems clear that maintaining amphibious ships is not a top Navy priority, and I do understand Ms. Morrow said that the Navy and the Marines need to come to an agreement on how these amphibious ships will be maintained. But how do delays in the Marine Corps' amphibious ship maintenance impact your ability to train and deploy Marines, and how would you be better supported by, and how could you be better supported by the Navy?
Senator, thank you for the question. We are very concerned with the condition of the amphibious fleet and the availability of the amphibious fleet. Out of this morning, I check it every morning, there were 13 of 32 amphibious ships available. In order to get to a goal of 3.0 MEUs, that is heel-to-toe MEUs, combined with their amphibious shipping off the East Coast, one off the East Coast, one off the West Coast, and one in the FDNF, that number is not going to do it. I look at it in short, medium, and kind of longer term, perhaps, solution sets, and we're working closely with the Navy. Of course, we have to get to terms of reference. We can't classify a ship that hasn't sailed in 10 years and probably never will sail as an available ship of any class, much less an amphib. But what I would say is we need to resource amphibious shipping to make it to their service lives and not decommission them early. Secondly, we have to get ahead of the maintenance curve. That means years ahead of port loading, of availability sequences, getting the avails in on time, making sure that we have the parts and the maintenance crews to maintain them and get them out of the avails on time. More toward the midterm, we need to make every ship count with service life extensions and midlife upgrades. Lastly,
thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that your needs are being clearly articulated. And as Ms. Morrow suggested, we need to have, it sounds like a good suggestion to me, that the Navy and the Marine Corps need to get to an agreement on what we're going to do with the maintenance of these amphibious ships. To have only 13 out of 32 available is what we say unacceptable. So as we sit here, can we have a commitment from the Navy that you are going to get into an agreement on this issue with the Marine Corps?
Ranking Member Hirono, you have my commitment to that. We do brief off the same data, which is an improvement in the Navy and the Marine Corps. We have the same database, so we look at the things similarly from big deck amphibs to LPDs to LSDs. So to me, that's a start. But we have to do better.
Thank you. I agree. You need to do better. Let me move on to General Mingus. Several of the critical training areas the Army uses in Hawaii, the main one being Pohakaloa on the Big Island, and the leases are set to expire in 2029, and these are vital. These leases are vital to ensure military forces can adequately train in the Pacific. And when we talk about the importance of the Indo-Pacific area, we obviously need our people to be trained. And so I would like to ask you, will you commit to continue engaging in good faith with state officials, because that's who you're negotiating these important leases with, and the community to ensure land retention is renegotiated in a way, lease negotiation is done in a way that is fair to the state, the people of Hawaii, and the military? General Mingus?
Absolutely, ma'am. We are committed to that. Since 2017, we've been working this. As you are well aware, over 500 town halls, meetings, various engagements that are out there. 2029 seems like a long ways away, but it'll be here tomorrow.
I know that it's not.
And so we will continue to and are committed to working this with you.
And to the extent that a land swap may be in the offing, I do believe that we need to provide the Secretary of the Army with the authority for that. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, like you, I have a number of other questions. Could I just go over 1 minute?
Sure.
Thanks. Thank you. So, General Mingus, last year we spoke at this hearing about the Army's crumbling infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific region. In Hawaii, 50% of Army facilities are currently classified as failing or failed, and the cost to repair or replace them is over $5 billion. However, the Army and other services are not using non-DOD funded contracting mechanisms like energy savings performance contracts to upgrade its infrastructure and lock in lower utility bills. What is the Army's plan to repair or replace infrastructure in Hawaii and the Indo-Pacific?
Ma'am, as we talked last year, there were significant investments in 23, 24. We're committed to that for 25 and beyond. We know that the water and some of the critical infrastructure underneath a lot of these locations are failing. We actually think it's maybe in excess of $5 billion. We've committed over $1 billion for this next year, so we absolutely want to work with you on those infrastructure, to include the leadership that goes with this as well. Kwajalein is an example where that was largely paid for with RDT&E dollars. We've actually put a garrison commander there to make sure that the leadership, in addition to the resources, is there to fix these problems.
I think the energy projects, for example, are important because the Army is the biggest user of the military, DOD, Army in particular, is the biggest user of energy, and whatever sums you can save on energy costs as well can go to other needed necessary projects. So would you commit to clear the logjam on installation of energy projects funded through non-DOD contract mechanisms?
Absolutely take a look at that, ma'am. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Senator Hirono. Chairman Wicker.
Well, Chairman, I surely am glad you gave Senator Hirono a few extra moments. You offered me an opening statement, and so I may take those few extra moments.
You are the chairman of the committee. You can do whatever you want.
Thank you. But I also want to congratulate Chairman Sullivan and Senator Hirono for their leadership in calling this hearing. It's a terrific panel, and it's been great so far. Let me say this about the CR. We repeatedly say, House and Senate, Republican and Democrat, that we never need to do this again, and for some reason, something comes up, some group is unwilling to compromise and look at the long picture, and we find ourselves in this position. I will say this about the fact that this is the first year-long CR for the Department of Defense. I guess we could at least admit that it is a hybrid CR in the sense that there are the anomalies that our witnesses have mentioned, and the numbers have been plussed up just a little bit. But this is a shame on our process, and it is not in keeping with what the founders intended. They intended for legislation to be difficult, but they intended for the parties and the houses to compromise and have some give and take and finally get in the right direction. In my view, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Ranking Member, the real flaw in the CR that we'll be voting on later this week is that it doesn't provide enough money, regardless of the anomalies and the tiny plus-ups here and there. Regardless of that, it does not provide adequate support for the military and for the challenges we have from four adversary nations, pacing challenges plus Russia, plus North Korea, plus Iran, that like never before have worked together to bring us ill. And it is contrary, Mr. Chairman and Madam Ranking Member, to the voice of the Senate in the National Defense Authorization Act, which plussed up national defense out of the Armed Services Committee and from a bipartisan vote on the floor by $25 billion. We couldn't get that done in conference, and so we are where we are on the authorization. But were it not for the prospect of a reconciliation bill that adds $150 billion for vital national security purposes, I could not vote for the continuing resolution as it is. Unless something changes, I'll have to swallow my words again this year and go ahead and pass it, because the alternative is so unpalatable and so dangerous. But I will say this: based on what we see, and based on what is in this continuing resolution, $150 billion in the reconciliation bill may not be enough. And I'm hearing some comforting words, Mr. Chairman, from the administration that they realize that too. And I realize they're the budget hawks in this city, and they're the defense hawks in this city, and we all want fiscal responsibility. But I'm telling you, $150 billion in the reconciliation bill may not be enough based on the way we have treated defense over the past few years and based on what we're about to do this week. So thank you all for doing what you can with the authorities and anomalies and little plus-ups that we give you. In the time I have to ask questions, let's talk about the ability, and I'll direct this to you, General Mingus, the ability of our reserve component to be ready for potential conflicts with near-peer adversaries. If a conflict began today, General, is the Army Reserve component manned, trained, and equipped appropriately to be successful?
I would say it would depend on the type of organization within the Guard and the Reserve, sir. We meet our directed readiness tables requirements in terms of the active component, the Guard and the Reserve, in terms of what are required inside those immediate forces that are needed inside of 10 days, 30 days, and 45 days. Once you get beyond that, then it is not as pretty as you would see. This last year, we did have to bring down in the op-tempo accounts for the Guard and Reserve. We typically like to keep them at 85% of their training requirements. We had to bring that down a little bit this year because of the top line that we were at. So there is concern. Now, as a result of that, the Secretary and the Chief and all of us are taking a look at what is the right balance between the active Guard and Reserve and what mission sets should be in those. And there's an active look at all of that.
Well, don't you wish you didn't have to begin your answer with "it depends"? I wish you didn't have to begin your answer with "depends." With "it depends." You talked about the balance. How about the balance between the types of reserve units?
And that's what I mean, sir. So, for example, our petroleum capacity is almost all in the reserve component. We know that we're going to need some of that capability early on in a fight, and so do we need to move some of that from our reserve component into the active component? So that's some of the analysis that we're looking at.
Okay, let's go to Admiral Kilby. And it seems that we're picking on that end of the table so far today. Admiral Kilby, the Navy spends billions of dollars each year to operate and maintain its combat surface ships. Those surface ships are vital to combat, to deterrence, defense of the homeland. Yet year after year, we hear about significant challenges to the readiness of our Navy's surface fleet. How's the Navy changing and modernizing in this regard, and also in the way they attack ship maintenance to get problems under control?
Hey, two general areas here, sir. Thanks for that question. One was addressed by General Mahoney. One, locking down that planning in advance of that availability is key. That requires the funding, and the contract closed about 4 months before we start the availability, which allows the contractor to order those long lead parts and develop those teams, in particular for amphibs, steam maintainers, and diesel maintainers, which are a shrinking pool in our nation. So lock down that project ahead of time and understand the condition of the ship, which means you have to do inspections and really understand vice opening things and inspecting them during the avail. So that's the first part about that. The second part is this piece I mentioned in my opening statement, which you didn't hear, but getting to 80% of combat surge ready ships, aircraft, and submarines. We've had some success in the Navy doing that with our fighter fleet and are spreading it to all our aircraft. We want to do the same thing with our ships, same thing with our submarines. That's a bigger challenge because of the complexity of it, but that's the goal we're after. That requires some focus and some effort to do that, but it also requires looking at processes which may not be helpful now and changing those processes, and that's what we did with aviation, sir.
Okay, and then let me just ask General Mingus and Admiral Kilby, on the recruiting, is part of making this more successful long term, a better career path for the people we place in these positions, General.
Yes, sir. I mean, most come in the military to serve, to make a better way for themselves in terms of their lifestyle. Some it's to get college benefits on the back.
A better career path for the people we put in recruiting positions.
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. I misunderstood the question. That is one of the things we've talked about. Similar to what the Marine Corps have been doing for decades, if we're going to put talent out in our recruiting formations, we have to reward that talent on the back end. So absolutely.
Same applies for the Navy. Focus on those recruiters. Telling their story to a potential recruit is what sells it. Identifying with that individual and connecting with them on a very personal level and having them see their future in that is what we need. So focus on that process. For us, we had an incentivized structure which was not to get the max people in. It was to recruit a certain number of people per month. We've taken those limits off. Bring everybody in. Don't save up recruits for next month. Bring them all in as soon as you can, and that will either fill up our delayed entry program or get those sailors to boot camp as soon as possible. That's been our success.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I want people in the military who are assigned to our recruiting programs to say, thank gosh, I got this great position. My career path looks bright because I've been put on a fast track by being a recruiter. That's my point.
Well, General Mahoney, you want to comment on that? Because the Marine Corps has been doing that for decades.
Yes, I would. Of the three things that I think are the pillars of our success in recruiting, the main one is a professional recruiting force. These people are screened, slated, handpicked, incentivized while they're in the job, typically will get meritorious promotions. And when they get out, what we find is when they return to the fleet, they are some of our strongest officers and staff NCOs. The Commandant was a recruiter.
Most Commandants
have been recruiters. Most of our general officers have been recruiters. Among our most successful staff NCOs, the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps was a recruiter. So as far as Senator Wicker seeing a path, that's baked in to how we make our recruiters, and they're a breed apart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Admiral, just real quick, 80%, you hit that with naval aviation on maintenance, right? Or on readiness.
We certainly hit it with fighters. I get a report every week on every type model series of aircraft in the United States Navy. We're not hitting it in CMV-22s. That's another story. We got it, but that's our goal, is to get there. Across the board for every type model series, it requires a different level of attention and daily and visual management by the air forces in the Navy to make that happen. We want to apply that same level of focus to our surface ships and our submarines.
Great, good. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And like others, I'm just going to talk about the CR first. You know, I came on this committee in January of 2013, and every year, you all and your predecessors sit before us and tell us that a CR is a bad thing, and we don't listen to you. You know, I mean, at some point, you got to measure by the action, not by the words that we say. We've allowed a CR to be normal from October 1 to the end of the calendar year. That's just kind of the norm. But we've often gone beyond that into the next calendar year. And we stand on the threshold of the first time where we've just gone a CR for the entire year. And I agree with what the chairman said earlier, the chairman of the subcommittee, that a CR is better than a shutdown. I do agree with that. But why do we have to accept, you know, half-assed over catastrophic? I mean, the House voted on a CR yesterday, and they left town. They're out. They adjourned. This was not, and now we're going to hear what the Senate has to say and then try to do the right thing for the country. They're gone. Because they're like, okay, we can jam you to vote for a CR that is bad for the defense of this nation by skipping town on a Tuesday. I mean, this speaks very loudly about the priorities of this nation. And this is all done in public with our adversaries watching. Admiral Kilby, I think you testified in your opening testimony that under a CR, 1/5 of our ships will miss their maintenance schedule. Did I hear that right?
11 ships, those maintenance availabilities are at risk.
Okay, so we want to get to 80% ready on ships and subs. Where are we now?
Depending on the day, around 67%.
On both ships and subs, kind of right?
Ships and submarines are a little less.
Okay. What will 1/5 of our ships missing their maintenance schedule under the CR, what will that do to the quest to get to 80% readiness for ships and subs?
Well, it'll certainly be a setback. We'll take a penalty there. We'll have to bow wave that maintenance to the next year, depending on the availability and scheduling of that ship. Worse off, we skip that availability, which means it's doubled down for the next one, which means we'll have growth work and a lot of things we didn't anticipate.
All right, so we're being told that this is the public, we're being told in public, this is the impact of voting yes on this CR that's coming to us. That we're just accepting that the quest to get to 80% is going to be set back because maintenance availabilities for 1/5 of the ships under a CR are not going to be according to protocol.
The only, and I don't want to say silver lining in that because I don't see a lot of silver lining. If we get a flexibility to move money, we may be able to address that, but it'll pack something else.
Yeah, you'll pull it out of something else, of course. But you know, we're told, well, that's better than a shutdown. Hey, it's Wednesday morning. I mean, on the Senate side, the appropriators basically had a deal at the end of last year. And that deal is still basically on the table. My hope is that there will at least be a vote in the Senate to do a short-term CR and then actually get an omnibus for the rest of the year. I mean, an omnibus is kind of a funny thing, a word to apply to a budget for less than half of the year, but it would be far preferable to a CR because you'd have new starts, you'd have other authorities within an omnibus that you're not going to get in a CR. And we ought to be able to do that. And the House decided on Tuesday night, we're splitting so we can force the Senate to accept a substandard CR that will hurt the military. Great week. Man, great week of work to leave town on Tuesday night feeling good about yourself because you forced the Senate to try to accept a substandard work product year after year after year after year. General Mingus, I want to ask you one question about counter-UAS readiness because the Army is the DOD's executive agent. Talk to me about how you're ensuring coordination between the services in developing a joint counter small UAS doctrine and solutions to addressing the UAS threat.
Thank you, sir. As the executive agent, you're well aware of the Joint Counter-UAS Office, or the JCO, that is run by the, but it is a joint entity. Yeah. And everybody that's sitting at this table, there's probably very few weeks that don't go by where we don't come together to talk about this problem set, whether it's in the venue of what Replicator 2.0 is going to bring across 100+ sites across the country, to now what is going to be part of the Golden Dome. But this conversation on the counter-UAS side is absolutely a joint problem. Yes, we have an Army officer in charge of it, but he is in a joint billet, and he is speaking for and trying to solve this problem for the joint force. And I collectively think this team is trying to get after that.
Give your effort a grade. That'll be my last question. Give the joint effort a grade right now.
I would give it a grade in two ways. One, compared to where we were 2 years ago in the B to B plus category, compared to where we need to be, it's probably in the C. Given the rate of technology changes in this space and where our adversaries are going in this space, we cannot go fast enough when it comes to counter UAS.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kane. Senator Scott.
So my Democrat colleagues don't like CRs, but the prior majority leader, a Democrat, wouldn't even bring up a spending bill that we could have done last summer to make sure we didn't ever have to do a CR at all. After 4 years of the Biden administration appeasing our enemies and making our forces less lethal, I'm glad President Trump's back and restoring peace through strength. He's been clear that he takes the threat posed by Communist China seriously, ensuring the United States is posed to combat these threats. I look forward to hearing how you're doing with that. But my first question for General Mingus and Admiral Kilby, Since President Trump was elected, recruitment numbers are way up. So is that a result of President Trump's election?
I think it's a combination of things, sir. I think it's the efforts, as I talked about in my opening statement, that have been being put into place for the last 18 to 24 months. But we have seen a momentum over the last couple of months that has been pretty remarkable.
I agree with General Mingus. We really took a round turn on this last year. We had 373 more sailors than we predicted to get it last year. So we had an apparatus that was aligned to try to get after this. I'll take any win to get sailors in the Navy that want to serve our country. So I don't know that I can map that to the election or not, but I'm going to ride that wave as long as I can.
So my background before I got into politics was I ran businesses, and the expectation was you had to beat your competition by improving every day. You had to get your costs better, you had to get your quality better. Everything you did, you had to get better. So General Mingus and Admiral Kelby, can you tell me in the last 12 months, what would you say for what you're responsible for? What would you say is the big improvements?
Sir, I would say at our transformation and contact effort, where we've infused the latest and greatest technology when it comes to mobility, firepower, our network, our UAS, counter-UAS efforts into multiple formations, infuse that technology at a rate faster than we typically would do, in quantities that is greater than we would typically do, because we want to learn from them bottom up to refine the decisions that we're going to make programmatically down the road. So that's going to expand into more formations as part of TIC, Transformation and Contact 2.0 this year and next year. But that's been, over the last 12 months, what I would say that has been our biggest win.
Two things. One, coming from the same type of thinking we're trying to build in the Navy, focused mindset, skill set, and tool set to get after that continuous improvement. There are some common themes here that we've applied across the board from aviation. So the recruiting is an improvement, and I'd say on-time completion of ship availabilities, as well as some success in submarine availabilities. But we've got a long way to go there, sir, to apply that model consistently every single day.
Thanks. And Micheal, we've seen the Pentagon failing to recruit, pass an audit, or deliver ships, equipment, missiles, et cetera, on time and on budget. On top of that, while the Marine Corps and Air Force are 100% recapitalized on their C-130s, the Navy needs over 30 C-130s and is yet to program for this critical tactical airlift platform. Today, the Navy only has one on contract, so can you explain why that is?
Sir, we try to balance our program across the board, all aircraft, all ships, all submarines. I'll take that question for the record and come back to you with specifics about C-130. But again, it's building the most lethal program we can afford.
General Mahoney, what would you say as far as if you take the last 12 months, how are you in a better position and individuals you're responsible for in a better position than you were a year ago?
Senator, two things. First is the second clean audit opinion 2 years in a row, and I think we're in the midst of having a hat trick. Why do I say that? One of the things, I call it the audit dividend. We know exactly what we own, exactly where it is, exactly who takes care of it, and what it is worth. In that audit, we can tell the condition of those pieces of equipment. So we have an increased visibility into the operational readiness as a result of the audit. The second thing is our 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment has just undergone a CERDEX. They have been delivered their long-range precision fires, their air defense. So the concept of force design has gone forward. I wish we could accelerate it and deepen the magazine, but we've seen that success on time. Now we need to marry that capability up with organic littoral maneuver in the form of the light amphibious warship. But those are the two things: force design and audit.
Right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Shaheen.
General Mahoney, am I to understand the Marine Corps is the only branch to have passed an audit?
That's correct, Senator.
I get really tired of
the only DOD branch, yes, sir.
I get really tired of Marines lecturing me how much better they are than I am. My wife's a Marine, so I already get it every day. So
I'm glad your wife has wisdom.
Well, I was in the Navy, so I had to marry up, right? Counter-UAS, General Mingus, you brought it up. General Mingus was my boss, actually, back in the day when I went through Ranger School. Counter-UAS, what branch, what functional branch of the Army do you guys place the counter-UAS responsibility in?
We have 6 warfighting functions inside the Army, so intel, command and control, maneuver, fires, protection is where counter-UAS sits right now. But as we think about the future, in the Army, the land force, the vast majority of casualties that occur on a battlefield is direct fire. I think that future battlefield, the most casualties are going to occur from the air. And so the notion of the convergence of offensive and defensive fires, taking it out of that protection warfighting function and making it part of that scheme of fires and scheme of maneuver, I think is the way of the future. But today, to answer your question, it's in the protection function.
Okay. Admiral Kilby, where does the Navy view counter-UAS as a functional area?
Because of our platform, Senator, we keep them owned by the resource sponsors, so it's a division of labor between the N9, which owns all our warfighting platforms, and the N4, which owns our shore installations. So there's a mix between those two.
And General Mahoney, where does the Marine Corps place that?
There are counter small UAS, 2 parts. Operational units with 2 programs of record, MATIS and LMATIS, and our installations with installations counter UAS. Just as a comment, as General Mingus brought up, we are part of Project Convergence, which has a counter small UAS element to it in R&D and experimentation. We're a big part of Replicator 2.0, which also invests in counter small UAS, and we're invested in the program office as well.
And General Spain and Space Force, Air Force, where do you guys place counter-UAS as a functional area?
From a Space Force perspective, it's very limited. We have very limited involvement.
Yep.
Senator, we put it in the protection function as well. It's with our defenders, but as was mentioned by by the other panelists, we're in the process of evolving that to the operational function, and so it's a blend of our both defender force and our operational force as we go forward.
Well, I asked that because I actually was one of the manufacturers of the MATIS program back in my former life before I came here, so spent a lot of time on the range with your air defense, lab platoon Marines working with that. And what I found as we worked with all the branches is each branch understandably had a very different view of where the CUAS function fell and how they viewed it. You know, the Air Force was very much looking at it from a security forces perspective, fixed installation defense. The Navy, of course, was focused on it from a shipboard when the Boxer had its incident with Iran in 2019. The Army, of course, had more of a EW. They really viewed it kind of as an electronic warfare issue. And what I found was, as each branch looked at it through their own lens, the Joint Capabilities Office really struggled to coalesce that into an acquisition vision that actually worked, and they ended up just buying any shiny object that was dangled in front of their face, and it led to kind of the schizophrenic approach to it. It's not a criticism, it's just the reality that as that technology was developing quickly, it was hard to meet all the needs. So I think trying to determine whether it's a specific MOS or actually assigning a functional area within the branch that say this is a fundamental change in battlefield tactic technology, as we see in Ukraine. I mean, every single day, whether it's FPVs or beyond line of sight drones, it's not transforming warfare, but it is functionally transforming how maneuver units will behave on the ground. And I think treating it as a subspecialty that's branching off whatever convenient areas there, vice focusing on what really is a core capability, in my opinion, would help coalesce the operational vision for what counter-drone looks like. It'd also help streamline the acquisition process so we can find that good technology quickly and field it quickly. But then also there's the offensive aspect where, we think of offensive drones as Reapers and Predators dropping Hellfires, and then we're defending against small drones, but we are not, as far as I can tell, adopting small UAS organic to our maneuver elements. Just like every infantry squad has an automatic weapon, every infantry squad should have an organic SUAS offensive capability, a backpack full of FPVs that they can fly at and into the enemy maneuver units and disrupt them, just like we're seeing all over the world in battlefields, from Iranian proxy groups to the Russia-Ukraine war. From my old buddies still in uniform, I do not hear that we have an organic offensive small UAS capability within our maneuver units, and I think that's going to be a great disservice to our young men and women when the next conflict arises. So I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sheehy. I'm going to continue my line of questioning that I started with General Mahoney to you. Just again on we've already touched on it a lot, but it's okay I want to hear from all the services. The negative impact on the CR, the budget flexibility that you would want or request as part of this year's NDAA, and then any lessons learned on the good news that we're all starting to see I think, across the services on recruiting and to kind of, make sure we're learning across services on that, because I don't think it got enough press, but if you have an all-volunteer force and we're hitting a recruiting crisis of tens of thousands of Americans who we were short, that's an existential threat to our military. Fortunately, it looks like we're beyond that, but we need to embed the lessons learned from all the services on how we got out of that danger zone. So, General, to you on those three questions.
Senator, as far as the CR, we've canvassed pretty much all the negative things. I'd just like to hammer down on one. We talked about anomalies and flexibility in order to move between appropriations or accounts. We also need to be mindful of what the top line is. If there is only so much top line from which to flex or to move, we're going to rob from one account to pay for another. Examples might be inflation that outpaces the plus up, pay raises that were not planned for or budgeted but are must-pay bills. That money will come from somewhere. And non-budgeted contingencies that we pay out of our own primarily O&M accounts will have to be accounted for somewhere in the rules of that continuing resolution. A knock-on effect specific to the Marine Corps is if, and it's already been touched on by Admiral Kilby, if ship maintenance or shipbuilding or procurement or anything that touches amphibious shipping, it will have a knock-on effect to the Marine Corps, as I spoke about with Senator Hirono earlier. As far as flexibility goes, I would reference the Lord Hale study on PPP reform, and I'll just bring up three things that come to mind immediately. I think they have 16 recommendations in there, which are all really good. Multi-year availability of one-year accounts so that you are not forced into making bad decisions at the end of the year and buying things that you really don't need, but have a period of availability to where you can make better executive and managerial decisions against that appropriation. Greater transfer authority so that we can move between appropriations or move between sub-activity groups in order to solve a problem early so that we don't have to come to Congress for an above-threshold massive reprogramming late in the year that may be late to need or not solve the problem. And lastly, and I'll let it go, is multi-year colorless appropriations to have flexibility within a portfolio to strengthen where you're weak and move money around to make sure that you can get your objectives attained within an account. So multi-year availability, greater transfer authority, and multi-year colorless appropriation. And we did the last one, and if you think of MRAP and you think of JADO back in the day, that worked pretty well to get things done at an accelerated pace. I'm running on here, but recruiting. For us, three things. We have a brand that we will not back off from. We believe that that brand is attractive. We believe it is a magnet to a wide demographic of young Americans who will prove themselves physically, mentally, and morally qualified. We will not back off of the standard, and counterintuitively, you maintain a standard at a high level, that attracts people who want to perform to that standard.
That's a great lesson, and I think we have to always keep that in mind. All the services, no matter what our recruiting challenges are, it is counterintuitive, but it works. So thank you for that.
And lastly, Senator, I already talked about it in detail, and that is our recruiting force.
Yep.
A breed apart, who are hand-screened, selected, incentivized, promoted. And as I said, when they get back in the fleet, as you know, they're some of the best staff NCOs and officers we have, and they become Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps and Commandant of the Marine Corps.
Real quick, General Gutline, can you just hit on these three questions? Try to be concise. I'm going over my time here. I want to be respectful to my colleagues, but I do want to get through this issue of CR, budget flexibilities, and recruiting.
Yes, Chairman, I can go pretty quick. From a CR, it's a huge challenge. It's very, very inefficient. It does impact us, especially because we are the smallest force with the smallest budget. So any churn in our budget is a huge hit to us. As far as what we would ask for flexibilities, I agree with the rest of the staff. New starts. We are seeing an enormous amount of threats emerging every single year, and it is very hard to get after those threats when you have to wait 2 to 4 years to get the budget to get after those threats. So anything you can do, budget flexibility for New Start Authority. PE consolidation, the ability to move money between programs would be hugely beneficial. And then the multi-year procurement, multi-year execution authority that General Mahoney talked about. As far as recruiting and retention, we've actually got a much easier problem.
Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. Canada, the European Union are hitting back after the Trump administration's steel and aluminum tariffs go into effect. A look at what goods will be affected by the new fees. U.S. inflation slowed last month for the first time since September. What it means for the economy as new U.S. trade policies unfold. Russia says it's still waiting for details from the U.S. about a 30-day ceasefire in the Ukraine war. This after Kyiv accepted the proposal made by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he'll speak with Russia later today. Senate Democrats debate on how to respond to a stopgap funding bill passed by the House of Representatives. The choice is between passing it or a government shutdown.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good morning. Today is Wednesday, March 12th. I'm Don Ma. Canada will impose $21 billion worth of tariffs on U.S. goods effective tomorrow morning. The move comes in response to President Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs that took effect today. They imposed 25% duties on shipments of steel and aluminum, with no countries excluded. Canada's finance minister says the counter tariffs will target steel and aluminum products as well as traditional and additional imported U.S. goods. On Monday, Canada's incoming Prime Minister Mark Carney said he would not speak with Trump until taking office. Canada is the biggest foreign supplier of steel and aluminum to the United States. In Australia, the government was disappointed not to win an exemption from the new tariffs, something Trump said last month he would seriously consider. However, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said it would be counterproductive for Australia to respond with its own tariffs. Other countries facing a significant hit from the Trump tariffs include Brazil, Mexico, and South Korea. However, the new charges have been welcomed by the Steel Manufacturers Association, which said the measures would supercharge domestic production. Investors are less sure, with U.S. stocks shedding more than $4 trillion in value over recent weeks amid trade concerns. The European Union also announced new tariffs on U.S. industrial and agricultural products today. The move comes within hours of the Trump administration's 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports taking effect. The EU measures will apply to goods worth approximately $28 billion. They will affect not only steel and aluminum, but also textiles, home appliances, and agricultural products. Among the specific items targeted are motorcycles, bourbon, peanut butter, and jeans. The tariffs primarily target Republican states, hitting soybeans in House Speaker Mike Johnson's Louisiana. They will also affect beef and poultry in Kansas and Nebraska. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized the EU remains open to negotiations. The British government today called the Trump administration's tariffs on steel and aluminum disappointing, but the UK says it won't retaliate.
On the question of tariffs, obviously, like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed, but we will keep all options on the table.
Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds did not rule out future tariffs on U.S. imports. He says he will continue to engage closely and productively and defend UK business interests. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has worked to build strong ties with President Trump, hoping to avoid the tariffs. Trump and Starmer said last month their governments would work on sealing a long, elusive U.S.-UK trade deal. After Kyiv said it was ready to support Washington's 30-day ceasefire proposal, Trump has agreed to resume military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Here's more.
Ukraine on Tuesday agreed to accept a U.S. proposal for an immediate 30-day ceasefire in the conflict with Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the agreement after more than 8 hours of talks between Ukrainian and U.S. officials in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation.
Rubio said he would now take the offer to Moscow.
And we hope that they'll say yes to peace. The ball is now in their court.
The development comes after a stunning Oval Office shouting match between the presidents of the two countries.
You're gambling with World War III.
The rift had immediate repercussions for Ukraine. President Donald Trump canceled military support and ended crucial intelligence sharing. But as part of accepting the proposed ceasefire, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said Washington will resume sharing aid and intelligence with Kyiv.
And that's effective immediately.
Outside the White House, Trump said there would be a U.S. meeting with Russia to discuss the ceasefire plan soon.
Hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. I think it's a big difference between the last visit you saw at the Oval Office and this. So that's a total ceasefire. Ukraine has agreed to it, and hopefully Russia will agree to it. We're going to meet with them later on today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to wipe out a deal. If we can't, we just keep going on and people are going to get killed, lots of people.
Is Zelensky invited back to the White House?
Sure, absolutely.
Later, Russia's foreign ministry said it didn't rule out contacts with U.S. representatives over the next several days, according to state news agency RIA. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was in Saudi Arabia but did not participate in the talks, said the ceasefire was a positive proposal. He also said the two countries would work to finalize a minerals agreement.
Russia now says it's still waiting for details from the U.S. about a 30-day ceasefire proposal in Ukraine. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington will have contact with Moscow later today. Here's Rubio commenting on the issue while in Ireland this morning.
We're going to bring it to them directly. We're going to say that Ukraine is prepared to stop all battlefield activity and begin the immediate process of negotiating an enduring end to the war. And we'll see what the response is. If their response is yes, then we know we've made real progress and there's a real chance of peace. If their response is no, it would be highly unfortunate and it would make their intentions clear. Here's what we'd like the world to look like in a few days. Neither side is shooting at each other. Not rockets, not missiles, not bullets. Nothing.
A reporter today asked the Kremlin if the truce is advantageous to Russia or not, and whether Moscow would link a possible ceasefire to other demands, such as the lifting of Western sanctions on Moscow. A spokesperson responded that it's too early for Russia to comment on the deal without having seen the details. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he welcomes the outcomes of yesterday's meeting with U.S. officials.
I think this is the first big constructive discussion between our teams. I'd like to thank the American side, the Ukrainian team, very positive results of yesterday's meeting regarding the restoration of assistance from the United States of America. I think this is important. Also on exchange of intelligence data, I also think this is important.
And a man was shot outside of Chicago O'Hare International Airport terminal earlier today. Police said the shooting followed an altercation among multiple people. The 25-year-old suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the lower body. The victim was taken to a hospital where he was listed in stable condition. Police said another witness was being interviewed. The shooting happened on a street outside of Terminal 2. Local television reports showed what happened to be a bullet hole in a shattered window near the baggage claim area. The airport said arrival lanes at all terminals were fully open. Coming up after the break, Senate Democrats debate on how to respond to a stopgap funding bill passed by the House of Representatives. The choice is between a government shutdown or passing it. And the Department of Education announces it's laying off around half its workforce. What Education Secretary Linda McMahon says about President Trump's plan to shut down the Education Department. Stay tuned.
funny expression. There's a little scar right below his neck. The artist, on a trip to somewhere in South America, he met this kid who told him a story about himself. The technique is really good. As you'll see, like in the foreground, there's water on his face. The texture is so realistic, but then sort of in the back, you have these washed out colors, almost a sort of fantasy feel. The whole of the picture is very balanced, and you still get that sense of harmony and warm light from it. The artist, he was really moved by the child's spirit. The child's from the slums, and so he looks around and he sees people who either get into drugs or they get into gangs, and he doesn't want that for himself. So he was telling this artist about how he's gonna make a better life for himself. The immense spirit and determination that the kid had really stuck with the guy, so that's why he painted such a large portrait of the child.
Many of us have been child fighters. But this little kid learned to defend himself in his own way. It's a great sacrifice that way. And so this is another form of strength, another form of endurance. We are capable of much more than we think. These children amaze us.
My mom and dad were traditional Asian parents. Now my father would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and then he would come home too tired to play with me. I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. Now my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. So I teased him the other day and I said, how come you never say that to me? And he said, you're too old now. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the material things, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious minute or moment.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Welcome back. The House passed a stopgap bill to fund the government through fiscal year 2025. It now heads to the GOP-controlled Senate, where it's going to need help from Democrats to pass. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this story.
The House Republican so-called spending bill does nothing to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. It is not something we could ever support.
Despite staunch Democratic opposition, the House of Representatives passed a continuing resolution to avert a government shutdown. Democratic lawmakers warned that the stopgap bill paves the way to codify spending cuts enacted by the Department of Government Efficiency.
First and foremost, we've seen that a lot of these cuts done the Social Security Administration and things like that, this would help codify those cuts and give more power to Elon Musk.
What is the Democratic alternative, or at least what are you hearing from your constituents?
Well, there's actually a bill that was filed both in the Senate, Rosa DeLauro here, that is a 4-week continuing resolution.
Obviously, I want to keep government open. It's important to keep government open. But the American people voted against the status quo. And so I don't know why Republicans abandoned their commitment to do 12 individual spending bills. That's what Speaker Johnson committed to his party.
On the Republican side, President Trump was in constant contact with House Republican leadership, and Vice President J.D. Vance met with them just before the vote. Even the House Freedom Caucus publicly endorsed the continuing resolution.
We need to deliver this continuing resolution to advance President Trump's agenda for the American people, and I'm proud to be a part of that.
Congressman, it's not usual for the House Freedom Caucus to be supporting a continuing resolution. What changed this time?
This is not a typical continuing resolution. It cuts funding, and it is not a stepping stone to an omnibus bill.
Congressman Thomas Massey was the only Republican to oppose the continuing resolution. The stopgap bill increases defense spending by $6 billion and decreases non-defense spending by $13 billion.
This clean CR contains no poison pill riders, no policy riders there at all, no cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security, zero, no cuts to veterans benefits, zero. And if you're allowing Democrats to make these intentionally false, scurrilous claims without pushback, then you're aiding and abetting the spreading this misinformation.
The House of Representatives, controlled by Republicans, went on recess right after voting for the continuing resolution. This is part of a strategy of House Republican leadership to force the Senate to pick the House's version of the stopgap bill and vote on it before Friday at midnight, or be responsible for a government shutdown. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Joining us now to discuss the bill is Thomas Savage, Research Fellow, American Institute for Economic Research and Public Policy Analyst. Thomas, good morning to you. What potential economic consequences do you think could arise from a government shutdown if this bill fails to pass?
Oh, that's a great question. We're seeing a lot of uncertainty in Washington there. We'll see how markets respond. The big thing there, the key word seems to be uncertainty. They're not sure how to react. They're not sure what's going to go on, what's going to get funded, what's going to get cut. And so market actors in the private sector will be hesitant before they take action, lest some changes in laws impact the cost of their doing business.
And can we talk about the contents of the bill as well? What do you think? Will the reduction in non-defense spending impact sectors like healthcare, education, and infrastructure?
Well, certainly it'll impact it, but quite frankly, the status quo was not working. Just increasing dollar amounts, increasing spending is not getting the results we want to see. You guys mentioned the education department just a couple segments ago. We've increased spending almost every year on education. Where has it gone? It's gone to growing administrative staff in schools. It's not going to teachers. It's not going to students. It's going to these middle-level administrators, and we're not seeing. And because of that focus, we're not seeing better educational outcomes. Our educational rankings have gone down since the creation of the Department of Education. Somebody has to go in there and see what's really going on and fix things. The same thing with healthcare. Just throwing money at the problem is not going to lead to better health outcomes. We have to seriously look at these programs, look under the hood, and fundamentally change them to be able to provide affordable, quality care to the American people.
So continuing on what you just said just now, what's the impact of the $7 billion in projected savings?
Well, hopefully that goes to paying down the debt, that goes down to making tax cuts permanent, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, making that permanent. There were some ideas maybe about a month ago about floating a DOGE refund check. Personally, I'd rather that money go towards paying down the debt, bringing spending down permanently, and making sure that the money never leaves my wallet in the first place, for years to come.
How do you feel about the $6 billion increase in defense spending?
Well, that remains to be seen. Just because you're increasing spending, like any other category in government spending, just because you're increasing the dollar amount you're spending doesn't mean you're going to get your money's worth. You have to make sure that the money's being spent properly. Is the Department of Defense spending that money in the best possible way they could? Are they properly prioritizing expenses and national security issues? Or is the money just being wasted? And that, just giving any department, whether it's defense, non-defense, healthcare, you name it, if they're getting taxpayer funds, the taxpayers have a right to know how that money's being used, to make sure it's being used properly and efficiently.
And another point here, what are the risks or potential benefits from blocking Congress from overturning Trump's tariffs?
That's a great question. The potential risk of stopping Congress from blocking tariffs, that creates more uncertainty in the market, and not just for the tariff-impacted industries, that's across the market. We've seen, again, that key word again when it comes to tariffs is uncertainty. Folks don't know whether or not these tariffs are going to get put in place. Are they going to get pushed back another month? And that is really impacting their purchasing decisions. And it's not just the folks on Wall Street too. It's your average American at the grocery store, at the gas pump, anywhere else. They want to do something. They want to purchase something. They stop and think: is this going to cost more now or in a month? What is a month going to look like? Are we going to see huge increases in prices? We're not sure. And so it makes folks hesitant. If anything, they are going to maybe sit out and wait it out and try to save their money just in case expenses jump surprisingly in the next month or two.
What's your view on whether Congress should, focus on a few specific individual budget items instead of consolidating spending into a single bill?
Well, Congress has to tackle each issue one by one, but of course, sometimes you lose the forest for the trees. But trying to consolidate everything into one bill, any piece of legislation that tries to do everything ends up accomplishing nothing. Congress should focus specifically on those key issues. Think about how much money is getting spent. I actually just released a paper with AIER looking at how each dollar was spent last fiscal year. And about more than a quarter of every dollar the federal government spent went to major healthcare programs. But Americans aren't seeing the quality, affordable health insurance that this should be promising. If anything, Congress should be prioritizing these issues, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, ACA, tax, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, tax breaks, subsidies. They need to go through with a fine-tooth comb because that is the largest portion of our budget. That's what's driving spending, and that's what's driving the massive amounts of national debt that not only us, but our children and grandchildren are on the hook to pay.
Okay, we just have a bit of more time here. I want your thoughts on Congress, repeatedly relying on stopgap measures.
Well, that's unfortunately seems to be par for the course. Congress, regardless of what the congressional makeup is, seems to wait until the 11th hour to get something done. It's like the student that waits until 11 o'clock the night before the assignment is due to get it done. Unfortunately, that's the given incentives there because they will wait until the last possible minute lest they risk any sort of election outcomes. Because you think about politicians, the first rule of politics is get elected. Second rule of politics is get reelected. Whatever priority number 3 is, it's far behind the first 2. And unfortunately, that means these big bills, they try to pass these major bills at the last minute and narrowly avoid a government shutdown. Otherwise, there will be consequences where things that the taxpayers enjoy. Unfortunately, when cuts do get made during a government shutdown, they prioritize, instead of prioritizing cutting any sort of waste or unnecessary things, they prioritize things taxpayers enjoy. So that way it gets the taxpayers on the side of the government of all things.
All right, Thomas, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
Next, big cuts coming to the Department of Education. The department announced yesterday that it's going to lay off about half its workforce within 90 days. Here are more details on that.
Starting Tuesday, hundreds of Education Department employees have been told they would be placed on administrative leave. It will go into effect later this month. In total, the department aims to cut around 1,300 jobs as part of the Trump administration's cost-saving measures. According to the department, 600 employees have already agreed to leave. That includes over 300 who accepted a $25,000 buyout last week. Education Department offices are being temporarily closed Wednesday. Employees got a memo earlier telling them to vacate their offices and work from home. One senior official said it's for safety reasons to protect the more than 2,100 employees who will remain. President Trump has called to dismantle the Department of Education entirely. According to a department press release Tuesday, the terminations are part of what it calls its final mission. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said on Fox News Tuesday that closing the department was the president's mandate.
Now, is this the first step on the road to a total shutdown?
Yes.
Actually, it is, because that was the president's mandate. This directive to me clearly is to shut down the Department of Education, which we know we'll have to work with Congress, to get that accomplished. But what we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat.
Senior officials told reporters the cuts would not impact any of the services the department provides, like financial aid, special education funding, and Title I funding for low-income students. Last week, Secretary McMahon said she plans to continue working with Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency to make cuts. She said out of every dollar the Education Department gives to states, only 47 cents makes it to the classroom. The rest, she says, is spent on regulations. A union representing more than 2,800 department workers has vowed to fight what it called draconian cuts. Meanwhile, the Department of Agriculture is pausing funding to 8 public colleges in Maine. The pause appears to be in response to the state's failure to comply with one of President Trump's executive orders to bar transgender athletes from women's sports. Last year, the USDA gave University of Maine systems nearly $30 million for agricultural research, youth development programs, and farmer assistance. The USDA now says it's investigating potential Title IX and Title VI violations at the universities related to discrimination based on sex and race. The USDA launched a compliance review of the University of Maine after Maine Governor Janet Mills told Trump last month she wasn't planning to comply with the executive order, citing state and federal law. A University of Maine spokesperson said the colleges are in compliance with relevant state and federal laws. They also said the system was unaware of any Title VI violations.
The House has passed 2 key measures, one targeting COVID-19 fraud and another rolling back a Biden-era IRS regulation. Both now head to the Senate. The goal is to ensure those who stole billions in taxpayer dollars during the pandemic can still be prosecuted. The House Ways and Means chairman says failing to act will let criminals and international fraud networks off the hook. Meanwhile, the House also voted 292 to 132 to repeal an IRS rule on digital assets. The regulations were issued just before former President Biden left office. The rule expanded reporting requirements for brokers handling cryptocurrency and other digital transactions. Both measures now move to the Senate. The IRS resolution needs just a simple majority, but the fraud bill must clear a 60-vote hurdle to become a filibuster to overcome it. A legal battle over claims of evidence tampering is brewing at the U.S. Agency for International Development. An email from USAID acting executive secretary instructed essential staff to clear out the classified safes and personnel documents from their now shuttered headquarters, then destroy those documents. That directive is being challenged as part of a lawsuit against the Trump administration's efforts to dismantle the agency. The plaintiffs are unions representing the agency's workforce. They argue the documents need to be preserved under the Federal Records Act and to be kept as evidence for litigation. The plaintiffs have requested an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order. President Trump has scored a legal victory in his lawsuit against the Pulitzer Prize Board. On Monday, a Florida circuit judge denied the Pulitzer Board's request to pause a defamation lawsuit from Trump until he is out of office. Trump sued the Pulitzer Board back in 2022. The lawsuit was filed after the board defended its decision to award the 2018 National Reporting Prize to the Washington Post and the New York Times. The prize was for their coverage of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and its alleged ties to the Trump campaign. For years, Trump has demanded that the board rescind the 2018 prize. In a statement Monday, a spokesperson for the Pulitzer Board criticized the president's push to continue his lawsuit while seeking stays in civil cases where he is a defendant. Trump's attorney has not yet commented on the latest ruling. A judge today is holding a hearing over a former Columbia University student. Mahmoud Khalil is challenging his arrest by immigration authorities. The case has become a flashpoint of the Trump administration's pledge to deport people who express support for terrorist groups like Hamas. The hearing is expected to deal mostly with scheduling matters. Khalil is Palestinian. He came to the U.S. on a student visa in 2022, becoming a permanent resident last year. He was arrested on Saturday evening by Department of Homeland Security agents. Khalil's lawyers argue the arrest violated his rights to free speech. Khalil was under investigation by Columbia University for helping to organize an event that glorified Hamas terrorists. The New York retrial of disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein is set to start next month. But this time, it's going to be a little different. There's an additional accuser against Weinstein. She brought her accusation just before the start of the original trial, but it was not included. Weinstein also has more legal firepower since his original trial. He brought in lawyer Jennifer Bonjean. She has been representing both Bill Cosby and R. Kelly in the past. A court of appeals vacated Weinstein's previous conviction, ruling the original judge allowed a testimony from women who were not part of the case. Weinstein also has a rape conviction in Los Angeles that still stands. His lawyers have attempted an appeal. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is calling for intensive testing of bird flu treatments on infected poultry. He says it could develop human therapies. He opposed mass vaccination and culling, speaking on Fox News.
Most of our scientists are against the culling operation. They think that we should be testing therapeutics on those flocks. They should isolate them. You should let the disease go through them and identify the birds that survive, which are the birds that probably have a genetic inclination for immunity, and those should be the birds that we breed.
The outbreak has devastated poultry farms, driving up egg prices. Meanwhile, Kennedy encouraged measles vaccinations amid a growing outbreak, but emphasized personal choice. Kennedy says there needs to be transparency and the government shouldn't force people to take it. He also renewed warnings about ultra-processed foods, suggesting they be removed from school lunches and food stamp programs. The EPA's new director has terminated the Biden administration's so-called Gold Bar scheme. The Environmental Protection Agency is ending green grants worth $20 billion that had been given to 8 nonprofits.
$20 billion of your tax dollars were parked at an outside financial institution in a deliberate effort to limit government oversight, doling out your money through just 8 pass-through, politically connected, unqualified, and in some cases brand new NGOs. The money has since been frozen, and the Department of Justice and FBI have been investigating.
The program was approved by Congress in 2022 under the Inflation Reduction Act. It aimed to offer grants for nonprofits, community development, bank, SAND, and other projects focused on disadvantaged communities. Zeldin says a comprehensive review of the program raised significant concerns about potential fraud, waste, and conflicts of interest. He said the days of throwing gold bars off the Titanic are over. The communist-controlled newspaper China Daily will no longer be distributed on Capitol Hill. Congress members say they worked with national news to stop China Daily circulation after lawmakers raised concerns. China Daily is one of several major state mouthpieces controlled by the CCP's Central Propaganda Department. The publication's Chinese website says its English edition actively publicizes and explains Xi Jinping thought on socialism. It also says it strives to influence public opinion in favor of communist-ruled China. Its U.S. distributor, China Daily Distribution Corporation, has been registered as a foreign agent in the United States since 1983 under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Fresh off talks with Ukraine to end its war with Russia, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Canada today for discussions with G7 nations. More on the meeting. A Cuban official says he has yet to discuss deportation of Cubans. That says the Trump administration goes ahead with a sweeping change to immigration policies.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. but you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowners insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by US News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
We now move to Greenland and the results of a highly anticipated parliamentary election. The center-right opposition Democratic Party emerged as the winner amid President Trump's calls to take control of the island. He beat out the incumbent center-left coalition. Both the Democrats and the second-placed party favor independence from Denmark, but they differ on the pace of that independence. The Democrats favor a slow approach. The party's leader said yesterday people want more business to finance Greenland's welfare. He said they don't want independence tomorrow, but a good foundation. As the U.S. is working to close a 30-day ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine, fighting still continues for now. Just yesterday, Ukraine launched the largest drone attack on Moscow since the start of the war. Today, the Kremlin gives an update on the situation in Russia's Kursk region. Russia says its forces are advancing in the western Kursk region against Ukraine. According to Moscow, Russian troops are recapturing villages from Ukrainian forces in the area. A Kremlin spokesperson says Moscow is closely following the information it receives from Russia's military. Earlier, the Russian Defense Ministry said its troops had retaken 5 settlements near the Ukrainian border. That's as Moscow pushes to eject Kyiv's forces who seized a slice of the region in a cross-border incursion last August. President Trump is pushing forward with his crackdown on illegal immigration, putting many Cubans at risk of deportation. However, Cuba's vice foreign minister said migration discussions with the U.S. have yet to take place.
When the agreements were made, that possibility of the United States admitting people and then unadmitting them was not considered possible. Was not at the time seen as something reasonable. So anything of that type will need to be discussed.
The Trump administration plans to revoke legal status of about 530,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans who entered the U.S. under temporary humanitarian parole programs launched by former President Biden. Upwards of 1 million Cubans have left the island since 2020, about 10% of the population. It's an exodus that experts say has few parallels outside of war. Cuba has long alleged the U.S. stokes mass migration with economic sanctions and laws that offer Cubans a clearer path to citizenship than other nationalities. The United States says Cuba is to blame for its migration crisis, accusing the communist-run island of mismanaging the economy and violating human rights. Philippine police have sent former President Rodrigo Duterte to The Hague to face charges at the International Criminal Court. President Ferdinand Marcos had police arrested Duterte yesterday. An ICC arrest warrant charges Duterte with murder as a crime against humanity. During his term, Duterte waged a highly publicized war on drugs. The court has been investigating killings and crackdowns overseen by Duterte when he served as president and previously as mayor of the city of Davao. Estimates of the death toll during Duterte's presidential term vary. Police say 6,000 people were killed. Human rights groups say the number is closer to 30,000. Duterte has insisted he instructed police to kill only in self-defense. The families of slain victims celebrated his arrest and rallied in the streets. The meeting has been confirmed. China says it will hold a meeting with Russia and Iran this Friday on the Iranian nuclear issue. That says the U.S. ramps up pressure on Iran to reach a deal that would block Tehran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Iran and Russia would send their deputy foreign ministers to the meeting. President Trump said he has sent a letter to Iran's supreme leader calling for a direct negotiation on a nuclear deal. Ties between Iran and Russia have deepened following Russia's war on Ukraine. Both countries signed a strategic cooperation treaty, and both have good relations with China. Iran has long denied wanting to develop a nuclear weapon. However, the UN atomic watchdog has warned it is dramatically accelerating enrichment of uranium up to 60% purity, close to the weapons grade level of roughly 90%. U.S. inflation slowed last month for the first time since September, what it means for the economy as new U.S. trade policies unfold.
Sana كثير رعب وطبعا هلا يعني أنا بحس بالرعب الكبير بدنا بس نعيش بأمان.
Conflict is raging across the world, and millions of children's lives are being devastated by war, hunger, disease, and poverty. We urgently need your help to reach children in crisis. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month, only 33 cents a day. We need 1,000 new monthly donors this month to help children in crisis around the world and right here at home. You can help us provide food, essentials, and life-saving medical care to children in the most need.
حريتنا يعني بدنا نعيش زي كل الأطفال بدنا نعيش بحرية وأمان.
In the darkest times, children suffer the most. You can help by calling right now and giving just $10 a month. All we need are 1,000 monthly donors. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
وعيت على هاي الدنيا القصف والنزوح والخيمة. أتمنى نعاود على بلادنا شايف لك إنه هذا مستحيل.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Show them they're not alone. Please call or go online to givetosave.org to help save lives.
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father. I overdosed on heroin and I lived. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. For the longest time, fear held me back from ultimately being who I wanted to. I found the fatherhood program, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. My desire to change had finally outweighed my desire to stay the same. I felt powerless for so much of my life that it's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. For the first time, I finally feel like I'm exactly where I should be, where I want to be.
In today's Business Matters, U.S. inflation cools for the first time in 4 months. GE Aerospace plans to invest nearly $1 billion in U.S. manufacturing. And Girl Scouts is sued over alleged toxins in some cookies. First up, the first in 4 months, inflation in the U.S. cooled off, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Consumer Price Index was 2.8% for the year-long period that ended in February. That's down from the 3% yearly rate reported in January. Economists say lower gas and grocery prices were major factors that helped bring down inflation. Egg prices increased over 10% from a month ago. But according to the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, the prices dropped after the department announced a $1 billion plan to address the egg crisis. GE Aerospace announced a nearly $1 billion investment today in its U.S. factories and supply chain in 2025. The aerospace giant's latest investment comes amid a strong travel environment that has led to strong demand for its engines and spare parts. GE also plans to hire 5,000 U.S. workers this year, adding roles in manufacturing and engineering operations. The company will spend $500 billion to bolster its engine manufacturing capacity and expand several key sites. GE Aerospace will also invest more than $100 million to support its external suppliers. The company said it aims to upgrade its tools, reduce deficits in parts it produces, and alleviate supply chain constraints. A proposed class action lawsuit claims some Girl Scout cookies contain heavy metals, pesticides, and other toxins. A New York woman filed a lawsuit in federal court yesterday. The lawsuit cites a study by Moms Across America and GMO Science that claims 100% of the cookies tested contained toxins. It's important to note that the study's claims are based on a small sample size. The study was not peer-reviewed or published in a scientific journal. The suit seeks $5 million in damages for people who bought the cookies across the U.S. It also calls for the cookie sellers to disclose the substances on packaging. The Girl Scouts responded to the allegations on a blog post last month. The organization says the cookies are safe to eat and are manufactured in line with all food safety regulations. Elon Musk has secured a major win in India by signing 2 back-to-back deals, bringing SpaceX Starlink satellite internet services to the country. The country's top telecoms provider said it had inked a deal with SpaceX. A similar agreement with India's second largest mobile operator was announced a day earlier. Satellite connectivity remains in its early stage in India, the world's most populous nation, many of whose rural poor still live in remote or hard-to-connect places. Musk has been trying to break into the Indian market for years. His electric vehicle company Tesla has been planning to sell its cars in India since 2017, but kept delaying its launch as efforts to negotiate lower import duties with the local government stalled. How do everyday Americans feel about the prospects for the U.S. economy under President Trump? NTD Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
Are you optimistic about the prospects of our economy under President Trump?
Yes, absolutely. He's trying to decrease the size of government. We've been bloated for far too long, and we know there is going to be a little bit of short-term pain, but in the end, it is going to be more prosperous for America.
I really think Trump is a master strategist when it comes to how to leverage the tariffs appropriately to assert the kind of pressure that we need.
It's hard to tell at this point, maybe not. I'm seeing a lot of good and bad, I guess, with it. I guess the problem I'm seeing is all the different layoffs, especially for the federal government.
So, I mean, the optics might look bad, but I'm sure there's bloat in government. I don't think there's an argument about that. You know, the media likes to focus on those very narrow things. In other words, look over here, but not over here where maybe some good is being done.
I'm a product manager, and when you have tariffs, it's a trade war, you automatically start inflation. So I'm not optimistic.
He started taking office, not too long ago. So I just give it some time. So yes, I guess I am optimistic.
On tariffs, part of the administration's agenda, according to President Trump, is to bring jobs and manufacturing back to the United States. So I guess the question here would be, would you be on board with short-term pain for long-term benefits?
Yes, if it builds our economy back up, keep the money in the U.S., yeah.
I mean, if it can bring stuff back to the U.S., that would be great. But again, I guess in the past, they always say that stuff made in America is more expensive, per se.
Oh, definitely. I come out of the private sector. We always have some short-term pain for some long-term gain. When you ship those jobs overseas to produce that same product for a low price, it's more attractive to us. So we've got to get over that.
I think China does have too much control over our economy. I think it's good if we do bring some jobs back here in industry here. I think you can't flip a switch, though.
You're going to have some type of paradigm shift and large adjustment, and that is some short-term pain. Part of this is the brokers and the traders panicking, and I understand that. They're trying to make money for their clients, but at the end of the day, it's like they have to look a little bit more long-term. They have to have a little bit more confidence in the market.
It's about supporting the American entrepreneur, which is truly the heartbeat of the American economy, bringing that back and helping the private sector grow the American economy to what it's capable of being.
After delays, NASA's newest space telescope has taken off into space. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket blasted off carrying 2 NASA projects yesterday. Launching from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, the rocket's cargo includes Sphere X and Punch. Sphere X is a space telescope that will collect data on more than 450 million galaxies and 100 million stars. Scientists think it will give us the insight how the universe expanded so quickly after the Big Bang. Sphere X will survey the sky every 6 months from an orbit over Earth's poles. NASA also packed 4 suitcase-sized satellites onto the rocket to take photographs of the sun. It's part of a project called Punch to study our nearest star. Human beings have been looking into the night sky for thousands of years, but despite our curiosity, we're simply not built for space. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on how the unforgiving environment impacts the body.
Let's get going.
Since the dawn of mankind, humans have been drawn to the night sky. Today, an instinctual curiosity still commands our attention. But for astronauts, conditions like microgravity and high-energy radiation expose the body to an environment it wasn't built for. International Space Station lead flight surgeon Dr. Stephen Gilmore describes the changes.
As soon as you enter that weightlessness environment, your body starts being responsive to that, and those the calcium loss and the strength loss and the loss in the ability to work, called aerobic capacity, those all start decreasing.
The human body functions optimally in the Earth's environment. We're used to gravity and relatively low levels of radiation.
Radiation has a number of effects on cells, but basically you're worried about it, depending on the kind of dose, breaking down the way the cells work and potentially introducing breaks and changes into the proteins and the DNA that's within the cell.
Dr. Gilmore says exercise is a critical part of adapting to the environment.
We kind of view exercise as a great big pill that we have the crew take to counteract all these adaptations that I mentioned. And so that's also a very big, that'd be to me one of the big 3 preventative things that we have in place.
For short-duration missions of a few days in low Earth orbit, about 95% of the biological damage sustained appears to repair itself upon return. For astronauts who spend months aboard the ISS, recovery seems more proportional to their time in space. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Around-the-clock original news coverage, watch us live at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. We'll cover more stories right after this break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
She's in quite a perilous situation, but she's completely strong and serene, and she's actually meditating. It was very, very well liked because no matter what culture or what sort of walk of life you're from, I think people, they see it and they immediately understand what that energy, what that message is, and they're drawn to it because everybody kind of needs a little bit of that in their own life, of, you know, the steadfast calmness and something to hold on to. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic. So I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. President Trump hosting Irish Prime Minister Micheal Martin today as part of the traditional St. Patrick's Day events. What are the topics of conversation? Canada and the European Union are hitting back after the Trump administration's steel and aluminum tariffs go into effect. A look at what goods will be affected by the new fees. U.S. inflation slowed last month for the first time since September. What it means for the economy as new U.S. trade policies unfold. Russia says it's still waiting for details from the U.S. about a 30-day ceasefire in the Ukraine war and plans for that. This after Kyiv accepted the proposal made by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he'll speak with Russia later today. Residents in Syria flee to Lebanon to escape the recent killings. And Israel blocks aid to the Gaza Strip for more than a week now. What's next? The captain of the ship that crashed into a U.S. jet fuel tanker off the coast of England revealed to be a Russian national. Meanwhile, the environmental impact from the collision appears to be less severe than previously feared.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today is Wednesday, March 12th. I'm Stephanie Cox. For the first time in 4 months, inflation in the U.S. cooled off. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Consumer Price Index was 2.8% for the year-long period that ended in February. That's down from the 3.3% yearly rate reported in January. Economists say lower gas and grocery prices were major factors that helped bring down inflation. Egg prices have increased over 10% from a month ago. But according to Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, the prices dropped after the department announced a $1 billion plan to address the egg crisis. Canada will impose over $20 billion worth of tariffs on U.S. goods effective tomorrow morning. The move comes in response to President Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs that took effect today. They imposed 25% duties on shipments of steel and aluminum, with no countries excluded.
Today, I am announcing that the Government of Canada, following a dollar-for-dollar approach, will be imposing, as of 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, March 13th, 2025, 25% reciprocal tariffs on an additional $29.8 billion of imports from the United States.
Canada is not the one that is ultimately starting this war. President Trump's tariffs against you are causing that. And there are no winners in a trade war.
Canada's finance minister says the counter tariffs will target steel and aluminum products, as well as additional imported U.S. goods. On Monday, Canada's incoming Prime Minister Mark Carney said he could not speak with Trump until taking office. Canada is the biggest foreign supplier of steel and aluminum to the United States. In Australia, the government was disappointed not to win an exemption from the new tariffs, something Trump said last month he would seriously consider. However, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said it would be counterproductive for Australia to respond with tariffs of its own. Other countries facing a significant hit from the Trump tariffs include Brazil, Mexico, and South Korea. However, the new charges have been welcomed by the Steel Manufacturers Association, which said the measures would supercharge domestic production. Investors are less sure, with U.S. stocks shedding more than $4 trillion in value over recent weeks amid trade concerns. The European Union also announced new tariffs on U.S. industrial and agricultural products today. The move comes within hours of the Trump administration's 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports taking effect. The EU measures will apply to goods worth approximately $28 billion. They will affect not only steel and aluminum, but also textiles, home appliances, and agricultural products. Among the specific items targeted are motorcycles, bourbon, peanut butter, and jeans. The tariffs primarily target Republican states, hitting soybeans in House Speaker Mike Johnson's Louisiana. They'll also affect beef and poultry in Kansas and Nebraska. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized the EU remains open to negotiation. The British government today called the Trump administration's tariffs on steel and aluminum disappointing, but the UK says it won't retaliate.
On the question of tariffs, obviously, like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed, but we will keep all options on the table.
Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds did not rule out future tariffs on U.S. imports. He says he will continue to engage closely and productively and defend UK business interests. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has worked to build strong ties with President Trump, hoping to avoid the tariffs. Trump and Starmer said last month their governments would work on sealing a long elusive US-UK trade deal. Joining us now to discuss the latest in tariffs is David Hebert, Senior Research Fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research. Good to have you with us. Trump's sweeping 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imported into the U.S. has been called a risky bet. There's no discernible impact on price data as of yet, but the effect could be delayed. How do you see the future impact of all of the recent tariffs on American consumers?
Well, thanks so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So I'm coming to you from the great state of Michigan, which relies very heavily on imported steel and aluminum for our manufacturing base in the automotive sector. And so if I were to say that the Michigan people are terrified of these tariffs, that would be correct. And the reason is because what tariffs ultimately do, and it's been shown time and again, is drive up the cost.
We've lost you for a moment. Your image is frozen. And I wonder if you could restart, or we may need to come back to you. All right. Okay, next up. And we will be back in touch with David hopefully soon. Okay, all eyes are on Senate Democrats' next move. Will the caucus give the GOP-controlled Senate the votes needed to avert a government shutdown by Friday? Or is it more important to stand up against the Trump administration's spending plans? NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
We're going to wait and see what.
As of Wednesday morning, Senate Democrats lack a clear strategy on how to handle the House-passed short-term government funding resolution. It extends government funding until September, while slashing $13 billion from domestic funds and boosting the Pentagon's budget by $6 billion. House Speaker Mike Johnson secured the votes with support from all but one Republican.
The bill is passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
After his success, House lawmakers wiped their hands and left town for the week, ramping up the pressure on the Senate to act.
And it falls on the desk of Chuck Schumer. He is the leader of the Democrats on that side, and he must determine whether he wants to fund the government, do the responsible thing, or whether he wants to shut the government down. And I certainly hope that there are enough Democrats in the Senate who have a conscience who will do the right thing by the American people.
A few Senate Democrats have expressed openness to reluctantly supporting the resolution.
I would not vote to shut the government down or withhold my vote.
Yes.
And I don't know what my colleagues are going to do, but I am describing that we can't shut the government down to claim to save it.
Obviously, I'm concerned about what this administration will do with regards to bringing people back to work. If there was a government shutdown, we could wind up in a situation where maybe this administration decides to leave parts of the government that provide valuable services to the American people closed permanently.
Senator Angus King, an independent who caucuses with Democrats, said allowing a shutdown might give Trump the upper hand. To avert a shutdown, 8 Democrats would need to jump on board with the Republican plan. That's including one vote to make up for Republican Rand Paul's expected no vote. Senate Democrats are expected to meet at lunchtime to strategize how to move forward. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And next, we welcome back our guest, David Hebert, Senior Research Fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research. We lost you for a moment there, but good to have you back, David. We were speaking about the impact of tariffs on consumer prices. If you'd like to restart your comments there.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm terribly sorry about that. So what tariffs ultimately do is they cause the price of goods and services in the United States to rise. It's important to recall that a tariff is a tax on imports. Other countries like Canada, Mexico, the UK, China, they're not importing goods into the US, they're exporting goods. And so because it's a tax on imports, it's ultimately a tax on the American people. We've seen this time and again from President Trump's taxes on imported steel and aluminum in 2017, President Obama's tariffs on Chinese tires in 2009, President Bush's tariffs on Chinese steel in 2002. Every single instance has been met with a rise in price. Now, this does boost domestic manufacturing of those particular items. We did see about 1,000 jobs created or saved because of President Trump's tariffs on steel. And this was especially true in the steel and aluminum producing sectors. But in sectors of manufacturing that use steel and aluminum, what we saw was a net loss of 75,000 jobs. And so what happens as a result of tariffs is not an increase for the American people. It's actually a net loss. And I can tell you, coming from the great state of Michigan, we are absolutely terrified of these tariffs on steel and aluminum and the effect that it will have on our automotive and brewing industries.
And how long do you anticipate these effects to last? Because Trump himself has said that they would work out in the long term. So I'm just wondering if you have a sense of the difference and when that might turn around.
Yeah, there are a lot of fantastic claims advanced about what will happen in the long term. And the unfortunate thing is we never really quite get to the long term. The effect of this is going to be higher prices for steel and aluminum. And what will end up happening are countries and companies that use these products finding substitute goods and getting away from the more expensive goods. So I don't see the price of these things coming down anytime soon unless we get rid of the tariffs. But even then, the damage to the economic friendship that we have with Canada, Mexico, the EU, etc., is already going to be done. And they're going to be looking for new trade partners that are not the United States.
The tariffs could also, so some people say that tariffs could boost the American metal industry. You've also pointed to that. But one U.S. aluminum executive, William Uplinger, actually warned that the tariffs could cost American jobs, even in that industry, in the metals industry. What do you anticipate the impact on jobs to be?
So within the industry, I would expect that there will be perhaps some increase in jobs, at least initially. But I think he's exactly right that as American producers move away from using aluminum because, again, of its higher price, they're going to see a net loss. This is exactly what we're seeing in the steel industry right now. Recall that we had protection policies put in place in 2017, and yet U.S. Steel remains on the verge of bankruptcy. And so it's a really difficult position to say that we're going to pick a winner in these industries and see that winner happen in the long run. What ends up happening is usually a bunch of people lose economic opportunity.
And you've mentioned already some of the tension in terms of the relationships between these other countries because of the tariffs. But if we just look specifically at Canada and their retaliatory measures now, they've come back, shot back very much at any instance of tariffs recently. And Canada's finance minister says they could retaliate again if the Trump administration imposes more tariffs. So where do you see this going if it continues? Do you think the tariffs will just cancel each other out? And also in terms of the relationship?
So I don't see them canceling each other out. I see them adding one on top of another. The reality is that when there's a trade war, there are never any winners. There's just one country that at some point says that enough is enough and they've experienced enough hardship that they're going to stop. But the damage will be done. And this is an additive thing. And not only is it additive in the short run, it's going to compound in the long run. Canada's trade minister is already flying around the world securing more free trade deals with other countries, attempting to supplant U.S. trade with the trade of other countries. She's even telling her companies that they need to find alternative sources of parts and manufactured goods other than the United States. So even if we were to flip the switch and rescind all of these tariffs, the damage to the friendship that Canada and the U.S. have enjoyed for over 100 years at this point has already been done, and it won't be brought back with the first olive branch extended.
It appears that Trump is trying to go back to the early days of the American economy, which was very heavy on tariffs and self-reliant in that way. How would you advise to move forward, if not relying on tariffs, to shore up American industry?
Right. So it's important to note that the U.S. did rely very heavily on tariff revenue until about 1913. It's also important to note that up until about 1940, the U.S. government did remarkably few things. Social Security wasn't around. The Department of Education wasn't around. There was no net interest on national debt because there was no national debt. Medicare and Medicaid didn't exist until the 1960s. And so all these things are the top 5 items that Congress spends money on every single year. You can run a government on tariff revenue when that government does remarkably few things. The CBO projects that the revenue from these tariffs will be about $270 billion per year. And that's under the most audacious claims that Trump has made about tariffing 10% for the entire world and 60% for China. $270 billion is a lot of money for you and I, but against a federal budget of $7 trillion, this amounts to about a 2.7% increase in their revenues. Now, that's not nothing, but it's also not going to move the needle on the fiscal health of this country. So I don't see tariffs as a pathway toward reducing the national debt. I certainly don't see it as a pathway toward lowering income taxes. I certainly don't see it even paying down the current $1.9 trillion deficit that the U.S. Congress is passing for this fiscal year. So it's hard for me to imagine the upsides of tariffs. It's very easy to imagine the downsides.
All right. With that, thank you so much for your time today, David Hebert, Senior Research Fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Next, residents in Syria fleeing to Lebanon to escape the recent killings. And Israel blocking aid to the Gaza Strip for more than a week now. We'll cover what's next. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he'll speak with Russian officials later today. That's as the Kremlin is waiting to hear details for the U.S. proposed 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine. A Palestinian activist faces a judge today. The case has become a flashpoint in the Trump administration's vow to deport terrorist sympathizers from the country. More on all that after the break.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air conditioner. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by US News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Welcome back. Residents in Syria have been fleeing to Lebanon to escape sectarian killings in Syria. Here to talk more about this with us is NTD national security correspondent and former counterintelligence agent Jason Perry. Jason, things seem to be very unstable in Syria. How long do you think this internal violence will continue?
Well, thanks for having me, Steph. Yes, things are very unstable in Syria and members of the Alawite sect, an offshoot of Shiite Muslims, appear to be the target of the recent killings. Now, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said that more than 1,200 civilians were killed, and the vast majority of them were Alawites. Now, residents in Syria have been fleeing to Lebanon for safety in recent days, and sadly, to try to stay alive. Now, some reports say that members of the new Syrian government, or HTS, which is a former Al-Qaeda affiliate, were actually taking revenge on this Alawite sect. And what stands out here is just a few months ago, Syrians living in Lebanon actually fled back to Syria for safety during the war between Israel and Hezbollah. Now they find themselves fleeing back to Lebanon, and hopefully they'll find safety there.
Syria's new leader says they're going to investigate these recent killings and punish those responsible, even if they're his own allies. How do you think the investigation will go?
Well, this is a big step for the new government and definitely a huge challenge for this new Syrian government, as they said they will protect minorities. So I think this investigation will give a clearer look at how the new government will operate going forward. And if they're willing to prosecute members within their own forces for these killings, it could send a message to others and possibly prevent something like this from happening again. But on the other hand, Israel's deputy foreign minister said Syria's government is actually a jihadist Islamist terrorist group. Let's hear what she had to say recently.
Even if some of their leaders have put on suits, the international community must come to its sense about the regime in Damascus. It's actually about jihad. This is a massacre the whole world should condemn. This is what an ethnic cleansing really looked like.
She also said Israel is committed from preventing what they saw happen in Syria from happening on Israel's border.
Jason, Israel also made a controversial move to block humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. Let's talk about that. It's been going on for more than a week now. How is that going so far?
When I first heard about this situation, I thought it would put pressure on residents to want to leave the territory, something the Trump administration has called for. And I had a chance to ask the Israeli government spokesperson, David Mencer, about this situation. And I asked him if Israel had any plan for when food gets scarce in Gaza, and if there were any countries that were willing to take in residents from the Gaza Strip if they wanted to leave. And he replied by telling me that Hamas uses the aid for terrorist activity, and no country would accept arming its enemy. So it appeared that he did not want to make a public statement on what Israel sees as the next step in this plan to block aid into the Gaza Strip. But time is ticking, and there is obviously not an infinite amount of food in Gaza. So with Israel blocking aid from getting in, it's only a matter of time before things get drastic.
And the U.S. has military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Now that follows, of course, Kyiv's support of Washington's proposed 30-day ceasefire with Russia. We'll go to that story next. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thanks, Steph, for having me.
And as you heard, we're going to tune into a story about Russia and Ukraine and the search for peace.
Ukraine on Tuesday agreed to accept a U.S. proposal for an immediate 30-day ceasefire in the conflict with Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the agreement after more than 8 hours of talks between Ukrainian and U.S. officials in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation.
Rubio said he would now take the offer to Moscow.
And we hope that they'll say yes to peace. The ball's now in their court.
The development comes after a stunning Oval Office shouting match between the presidents of the two countries.
You're gambling with World War III.
The rift had immediate repercussions for Ukraine. President Donald Trump canceled military support and ended crucial intelligence sharing. But as part of accepting the proposed ceasefire, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said Washington will resume sharing aid and intelligence with Kyiv.
And that's effective immediately.
Outside the White House, Trump said there would be a U.S. meeting with Russia to discuss the ceasefire plan soon.
Hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. I think it's a big difference between the last visit you saw at the Oval Office and this. So that's a total ceasefire. Ukraine has agreed to it, and hopefully Russia will agree to it. We're going to meet with them later on today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to wipe out a deal. If we can't, we just keep going on and people are going to get killed, lots of people.
Is Zelensky invited back to the White House?
Sure, absolutely.
Later, Russia's foreign ministry said it didn't rule out contacts with U.S. representatives over the next several days, according to state news agency RIA. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was in Saudi Arabia but did not participate in the talks, said the ceasefire was a positive proposal. He also said the two countries would work to finalize a minerals agreement.
Russia now says it's still waiting for details from the U.S. about a 30-day ceasefire proposal in Ukraine. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington will have contact with Moscow later today. Here's Rubio commenting on the issue while in Ireland this morning.
We're going to bring it to them directly. We're going to say that Ukraine is prepared to stop all battlefield activity and begin the immediate process of negotiating an enduring end to the war. And we'll see what their response is. If their response is yes, then we know we've made real progress and there's a real chance of peace. If their response is no, it would be highly unfortunate and it would make their intentions clear. Here's what we'd like the world to look like in a few days. Neither side is shooting at each other. Not rockets, not missiles, not bullets, nothing.
A reporter today asked the Kremlin if the truce is advantageous to Russia or not, and whether Moscow would link a possible ceasefire to other demands, such as the lifting of Western sanctions on Moscow. A spokesperson responded that it's too early for Russia to comment on the deal without having seen the details. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he welcomes the outcomes of yesterday's meeting with U.S. officials.
I think this is the first big constructive discussion between our teams. I'd like to thank the American side, the Ukrainian team. Very positive results of yesterday's meeting regarding the restoration of assistance from the United States of America. I think this is important. Also on exchange of intelligence data, I also think this is important.
President Trump met with Irish Prime Minister Micheal Martin moments ago. The annual White House meeting to mark St. Patrick's Day is usually a straightforward affair for both the United States and Ireland. Here's a clip of the president welcoming the Irish leader to the White House.
Ready, two, ready, door, ready, pop, ready. Ready, close. Ready, shut. Ready, face. President Trump, your reaction to the latest inflation numbers in the U.S. Very good news.
Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire announced she will not run for re-election in 2026 today. Shaheen started in the U.S. Senate in 2009. Her decision sets up a potentially competitive race to replace her. In a video announcing her decision, Shaheen didn't give a reason for not running, merely saying, quote, "It's just time." Shaheen says she will serve out her term, which ends in 2027. The House has passed two key measures, one targeting COVID-19 fraud and another rolling back a Biden-era IRS regulation. Both now head to the Senate. The goal is to ensure those who stole billions in taxpayer dollars during the pandemic can still be prosecuted. The House Ways and Means chairman says failing to act would let criminals and international fraud networks off the hook. Meanwhile, the House also voted 292 to 132 to repeal an IRS rule on digital assets. The regulations were issued just before former President Biden left office. The rule expanded reporting requirements for brokers handling cryptocurrency and other digital transactions. Both measures now move to the Senate. The IRS resolution needs just a simple majority, but the fraud bill must clear a 60-vote hurdle to overcome a filibuster. And a legal battle over claims of evidence tampering is brewing at the U.S. Agency for International Development. An email from USAID's acting executive secretary instructed essential staff to clear out the classified safes and personal documents from their now shuttered headquarters, then destroy those documents. That directive is being challenged as part of a lawsuit against the Trump administration's efforts to dismantle the agency. The plaintiffs are unions representing the agency's workforce. They argue the documents need to be preserved under the Federal Records Act and to be kept as evidence for litigation. The plaintiffs have requested an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order. President Trump has scored a legal victory in his lawsuit against the Pulitzer Prize Board. On Monday, a Florida circuit judge denied the Pulitzer Board's request to pause a defamation lawsuit from Trump until he's out of office. Trump sued the Pulitzer Board back in 2022. The lawsuit was filed after the board defended its decision to award the 2018 National Reporting Prize to the Washington Post and the New York Times. The prize was for their coverage of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and its alleged ties to the Trump campaign. For years, Trump has demanded that the board rescind the 2018 prize. In a statement Monday, a spokesperson for the Pulitzer Board criticized the president's push to continue his lawsuit while seeking stays in civil cases where he's a defendant. Trump's attorney has not yet commented on the latest ruling. A judge today is holding a hearing over a former Columbia University student. Mahmoud Khalil is challenging his arrest by immigration authorities. The case has become a flashpoint of the Trump administration's pledge to deport people who express support for terrorist groups like Hamas. The hearing is expected to deal mostly with scheduling matters. Khalil is Palestinian. He came to the U.S. on a student visa in 2022, becoming a permanent resident last year. He was arrested on Saturday evening by Department of Homeland Security agents. Khalil's lawyers argue the arrest violated his right to free speech. Khalil was under investigation by Columbia University for helping organize an event that glorified Hamas terrorists. The communist-controlled newspaper China Daily will no longer be distributed on Capitol Hill. Congress members say they worked with National News to stop China Daily's circulation after lawmakers raised concerns. China Daily is one of several major state mouthpieces controlled by the Chinese Communist Party's Central Propaganda Department. The publication's Chinese website says its English edition actively publicizes and explains Xi Jinping thought on socialism. It also says it strives to influence public opinion in favor of communist-ruled China. Its U.S. distributor, China Daily Distribution Corporation, has been registered as a foreign agent in the United States since 1983 under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. A man was shot outside of a Chicago O'Hare International Airport terminal earlier today. Police said the shooting followed an altercation among multiple people. The 25-year-old suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the lower body. The victim was taken to a hospital where he was listed in stable condition. Police said another witness was being interviewed. The shooting happened on a street outside of Terminal 2. Local television reports showed what appeared to be a bullet hole in a shattered window near the baggage claim area. The airport said arrival lanes at all terminals were fully open. Stay with us. Still to come, fresh off talks with Ukraine to end its war with Russia, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Canada today for discussions with G7 nations. More on that meeting. And the captain of the ship that crashed into a U.S. jet fuel tanker off the coast of England has been revealed to be a Russian national. Meanwhile, environmental concerns have eased regarding pollution created by the collision. More on all those stories after the break.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
Looking to refresh the style in your home? Here at Mathis Home, we can help you find exactly what you need during our spring style event. Whether you're looking for rustic farmhouse, classic, or modern and eclectic, we have all the latest looks that will leave your home feeling brand new. Whatever your style, we know that we can help you find it at the lowest price. Because not only do we want you to feel good in your home, we know that to earn your business, our prices have to be the best. So come to the spring style event at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
I'm Stephania Cox, and this is World Watch. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Canada today for high-stakes G7 talks. Former Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte is in The Hague to face charges at the International Criminal Court and the results of a highly anticipated parliamentary election in Greenland. Let's get started. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Canada today for high-stakes G7 talks in Quebec. His visit follows discussions in Saudi Arabia with top Ukrainian officials on a potential ceasefire plan. Rubio's trip comes amid escalating trade tensions as Canada announced counter tariffs on over $20 billion of U.S. goods this morning. Rubio is expected to discuss trade disputes with Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly, insisting the two nations still share key interests. Meanwhile, incoming Prime Minister Mark Carney has issued a warning saying the U.S. has its sights set on Canada's resources, water, and land. And we move now to Greenland and the results of a highly anticipated parliamentary election. The center-right opposition Democratic Party emerged as the winner, and amid President Trump's calls to take control of the island. He beat out the incumbent center-left coalition. Both the Democrats and the second-place party favor independence from Denmark, but they differ on the pace of that independence. The Democrats favor a slow approach. The party's leader said yesterday people want more business to finance Greenland's welfare. He said they don't want independence tomorrow, but a good foundation. As the U.S. is working to close a 30-day ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine, fighting still continues for now. Just yesterday, Ukraine launched the largest drone attack on Moscow since the start of the war. Today, the Kremlin gives an update on the situation in Russia's Kursk region. Russia says its forces are advancing in the western Kursk region against Ukraine. According to Moscow, Russian troops are recapturing villages from Ukrainian forces in the area. A Kremlin spokesperson says Moscow is closely following the information it receives from Russia's military. Earlier, the Russian Defense Ministry said its troops had retaken 5 settlements near the Ukrainian border. That's as Moscow pushes to eject Kyiv's forces, who seized a slice of the region in a cross-border incursion last August. Philippine police have sent former President Rodrigo Duterte to The Hague to face charges at the International Criminal Court. President Ferdinand Marcos said police arrested Duterte yesterday. An ICC arrest warrant charges Duterte with murder as a crime against humanity. During his term, Duterte waged a highly publicized war on drugs. The court has been investigating killings and crackdowns overseen by Duterte when he served as president and previously as mayor of the city of Davao. Estimates of the death toll during Duterte's presidential term vary. Police say 6,000 people were killed. Human rights groups say the number is closer to 30,000. Duterte has insisted he instructed police to kill only in self-defense. The families of the slain victims celebrated his arrest and rallied in the streets. A debate between the Dalai Lama and Beijing over where the spiritual leader's successor will be born. Tibetan culture believes when the Dalai Lama dies, his soul will reincarnate. And followers would find the child believed to be his reincarnation as the successor. But the Chinese Communist Party has been insisting it would choose the successor. Tibetan government is in exile, rejecting the statement Tuesday.
China should understand and know that His Holiness is the only legitimate soul who can decide upon where His Holiness should be born in his next life.
This comes after the Dalai Lama said his successor will be born outside China. The CCP said yesterday that current Dalai Lama was approved by the central government and that any reincarnation of living Buddhas must comply with Chinese laws and regulations. But the 89-year-old Dalai Lama says in his new book that any successor that China names would not be respected. He has lived in exile in India since 1959. The meeting has been confirmed. China says it would hold a meeting with Russia and Iran this Friday on the Iranian nuclear issue. That's as the U.S. ramps up pressure on Iran to reach a deal that would block Tehran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Iran and Russia would send their deputy foreign ministers to the meeting. President Trump said he has sent a letter to Iran's supreme leader calling for a direct negotiation on a new nuclear deal. Ties between Iran and Russia have deepened following Russia's war on Ukraine. Both countries signed a strategic cooperation treaty, and both have good relations with China. Iran has long denied wanting to develop a nuclear weapon. However, the UN atomic watchdog has warned it is dramatically accelerating enrichment of uranium to up to 60% purity, close to the weapons grade level of roughly 90%. A Russian national has been revealed as the captain of the ship that collided with a U.S. jet fuel tanker on the English coast. Monday's collision saw both ships on fire. But environmental concerns have eased with reports that pollution has been limited. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has that for us.
The captain of a ship that hit a U.S. jet fuel tanker off the coast of northeast England has now been revealed to be a Russian national. That's according to Ernst Russ, the German company that owns the Portuguese-flagged Solong ship. The rest of the 14-strong crew, one of whom is missing and presumed dead, are a mix of Russian and Filipino nationals. British police on Tuesday arrested the Solong's 59-year-old captain on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. He hasn't been charged. Police are continuing their inquiries. The Solong on Monday crashed into the Stena Immaculate tanker, which was carrying 220,000 barrels of jet fuel for the US military. The collision left a gaping hole in the Stena Immaculate. The 23-strong crew who were on board the Stena were all evacuated safely. They were reported to be Americans. British Transport Minister Mike Kane said on Tuesday there was no evidence of foul play. Shadow Transport Minister Jerome Mayhew on Wednesday said the nationality of the Solong's captain raises further questions about the potential motivation behind the incident. He said, "Where military assets are damaged, it is vital that motives are fully investigated to exclude foul play." The collision caused huge fires and explosions and leaked fuel into the sea. British Coast Guard said fires on the Solong have greatly reduced, while there were no visible flames at the Stena Immaculate. The Stena Immaculate was operating as part of the US government's tanker security program, a group of commercial vessels that can be contracted to carry fuel for the military when needed. Crowley, the maritime company managing the Stena Immaculate, said a jet fuel spill from the vessel has had a limited impact. It remains unclear how much jet fuel was released, but an initial review shows it had evaporated due to exposure to fires on both vessels. The British Coast Guard said on Wednesday that there had been no further reports of pollution from either vessel since then. The operators of the vessels and maritime authorities have yet to offer an explanation of why multiple safety systems on board the vessels failed to prevent the collision. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
President Trump met with Irish Prime Minister Micheal Martin moments ago. Here's what they had to say in the Oval Office.
And every other way is very, very strong and very, very good. So I just want to welcome you to Washington, D.C. and to our country, and thank you very much.
May I thank you, President. It's a great honor for me to be here to celebrate St. Patrick's with you.
Right.
And I thank you for your hospitality and the warmth of your reception. And I commend you in terms of the work that you're doing, particularly in terms of the pursuit of peace, which we discussed earlier. And I think that's going well. And you really have, in the first sort of 100 days of this government, you've done some extraordinary things very quickly.
Thank you.
Everybody's watching in that respect. So
thank you.
Delighted to be here. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's a great honor to have you, and special people, very special people. I know a lot of Irish, and growing up in New York, I know a couple of your people that used to live in that beautiful Ireland, and now they're here, but they love your country very much. You know, they have a great feeling toward your country.
They have, and a lot come back for holidays and stuff like that, and checking out on their family, ancestry and things like that. You know.
Great, fantastic people.
Some go to Doonbeg as well. Yeah.
And they go. We love Doonbeg. I love them. I don't know if I'll ever see it again. Maybe I won't, but
we would like
I
to
think
come back
I will.
and see it.
We'll get there. We're going to get there. It's a beautiful place, wonderful place. Any questions?
Mr. President, on tariffs, how far are you
worried?
President Trump, how worried are you about the counter tariffs from the EU, which were announced yesterday? And also, how worried should Ireland be, given the fact that it has a massive trade surplus with the US, over $50 billion? Micheal Martin might be quite nervous about what you're going to tell him today.
Well, I don't think he looks nervous to me. And if he was nervous, he wouldn't show it. No, we do have a massive deficit with Ireland, because Ireland was very smart. They took our pharmaceutical companies away from presidents that didn't know what they were doing. And, you know, it's too bad that happened. It's a tremendous job I give. Look, the Irish are smart. Yes, smart people. And you took our pharmaceutical companies and other companies, but, you know, through taxation and proper taxation, they made it very, very good for companies to move over there. And we had presidents and people that were involved in this that had no idea what they were doing, and they lost big segments of our economy. The European Union treats us very badly. They have for years. I saw that. I had it out with them in my first term. It did well, but we had to solve other problems, and we did. But European Union's been very tough. And it's our turn, too. You know, we get a turn at that also. But they have not been fair. They sue our companies and win massive amounts of money. They sued Apple, won $17 billion. And they use that for other reasons, I guess, or to run the European Union. So I'm not knocking it. They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union. But it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them. nobody can complain about that. Whatever it is, it doesn't even matter what it is. If they charge us 25 or 20% or 10% or 2% or 200%, then that's what we're charging them. And so I don't know why people get upset about that, because there's nothing more fair than that. And we had a problem with Ontario, and they dropped that when I let them know what we were going to be doing. They dropped it immediately, so I'm glad, because electricity, you shouldn't be playing with electricity. It affects people's lives. Actually their life. I mean, it can affect, depending on weather, it can affect their life, so we can't do that. And it doesn't make sense that our country allows electricity to be made in another country and sold into us. Who did that deal for the United States? Okay, I looked at that long ago, and I said that's not something that's very smart. So we've had a lot of bad trade policies, and yet we're doing very well right now. But we're doing well because I won the election. If I didn't win the election, you would have had a very bad period. I think a lot of the stock market going down was because of a really bad 4 years that we had. When you look at inflation and all of the other problems wars and inflation and so many other problems. But we're going to have very good years. We had, I don't know if you saw a little thing like the cost of eggs, little to you, but big to people out there, down almost 30% in the last few days. We got it down. We did a lot of things. We have a great Secretary of Agriculture, and we did a lot of things that got the cost of eggs down very substantially. And so many other things. A very big thing that I'm very happy with is oil is down to $65 a barrel. And that's faster than I would have attempted. We put on the gas, we stepped in the gas in order to get oil, and what's happening. So we're getting that down. And when energy comes down, prices are going to be coming down with it. So in a very short period of time, we've done a very good job. And I think that the tariffs that we're talking about, and again, reciprocal. I think that the tariffs, there are some cases where they're a little beyond reciprocal, because we've been abused for a long time as a country. We have been abused really for a long time, and we will be abused no longer. Okay.
Are you going to retaliate to the EU retaliation?
Education, sir, would you describe for us, is this meeting your vision by cutting about half the workforce? And what responsibility do you feel to the civil servants who have now lost their jobs? Many of them worked at the Department of Education during your first term.
Sure, I do. I feel very badly, but many of them don't work at all. Many of them never showed up to work. Many of them never showed up to work, Kelly, and unfortunately, and that's not good. And when we cut, we go, and that's what I had a number of meetings with a lot of people over the last couple of months. When we cut, we want to cut, but we want to cut the people that aren't working or not doing a good job. We're keeping the best people. And Linda McMahon is a real professional, actually a very sophisticated business person. And she cut a large number, but she kept the best people. And we'll see how it all works out. But our country was run very badly. I mean, whether it was that or contracts that were signed that was so bad, so obviously bad, and I go through them in speeches. I could go through them all day long. I could read for billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, and all of that fat and waste and fraud and abuse is being taken out. But it's incredible what's happened. Now, Department of Education's, maybe more so than any other place, has a lot of people that can be cut. They're, number one, not showing up to work. Number two, they're not doing a good job. And if you take a look at our education process, and if you look at the charts, because they have numerous charts where they do the top 40, we're at number 37, 38, 39, and 40. And recently they hit, during Biden's last few days, they hit last. So they were number 40, and yet we're number 1 in cost per pupil. So it's pretty bad. But we have a dream, and you know what the dream is? We're going to move the Department of Education. We're going to move education into the states, so that the states, instead of bureaucrats working in Washington, so that the states can run education. And you have Norway, you have Denmark, you have Sweden, you have Finland, you have various countries that do very well. You also have China that does very well in education, which is a pretty big tribute to China, I must say. 1.4 billion, and they're in the top 10. And it's pretty amazing. So we can't blame size anymore. You know, normally you'd blame size. It's too big. How can you do it? But China does it. So we think when you move it back to Iowa and Indiana and all the states that run so well, there's so many, I could name 30, maybe almost 40. Those will be as good as Denmark. Those will be as good as Norway, and they'll be as good as any of these. I believe they'll be as good as any. Now, then you're going to have 10 that won't be so great. You're going to have 5 that will not be good at all, but we'll work with them and we'll get them to be good. But what we want to do is always school choice, but we're going to do school choice, and we're doing it. But we want education to be moved back where the states run education, where the parents of the children will be running education, where governors that are doing a very good job will be running education, not run. I drive through the city and I see like so many buildings, Department of Education, Department of big buildings, and by the way, they're empty. Nobody shows up to work. So I think Linda did a very good job.
Mr. President, do you have a meeting with Vladimir Putin scheduled or a conversation? What would be your
I won't comment on that, but we had a great success yesterday. We have a full ceasefire if it kicks in. We have to see. It's up to Russia now. But we've had a good relationship with both parties, actually, and we'll see. We'll be knowing people are going to Russia right now as we speak. And hopefully we can get a ceasefire from Russia. And if we do, I think that would be 80% of the way to getting this horrible bloodbath finished. It's a bloodbath is taking place over there. On average, 2,000 to 3,000 young people a week are being killed in that stupid war that would have never happened if I were president. So we have people going over there, Mr. VP. Do you have anything to say about it? Because you're very much involved. What's going to happen?
Well, we've got some conversations that are happening on the phone and in person with some of our representatives over the next couple of days. As the president said, we think that we're in a very good place where the Ukrainians have agreed to a ceasefire, and we're now going to see whether we can get the Russians to agree to a ceasefire too, and we'll certainly have news on that when we find out that news.
Are you confident that President Putin will keep the ceasefire, considering that he's broken them in the past?
We haven't spoken to him yet with substance, because we just found out and we just were able to get Ukraine to agree. So we're going to know very soon. I've gotten some positive messages, but a positive message means nothing. This is a very serious situation. This is a situation that could lead to World War III. And Biden should have never let it happen. Incompetence allowed this to happen. This shouldn't have happened. October 7th in the Middle East should have never happened with Israel. The horrible leaving, the way they left Afghanistan should have never happened. Inflation should have never happened. You know, we have great inflation numbers, by the way, just got released. Inflation is way down, and it's based on what we've done, and we've done it in a very short period of time. You know, we had virtually no inflation. For 4 years, we had almost no inflation, and when these characters took over, we went from no inflation to the worst inflation probably in the history of our country. So it's very interesting. Go ahead.
Are you going to retaliate against
and by the way, I have to speak of inflation. I love these socks. What's with these socks?
It's in honor of the T-shirts.
I'm trying to stay focused, but I'm very impressed with the VP's socks.
Mr. President,
what would say to you that the United States is recognized as having such an important role in the peace process, and yet half the parties from the Northern Ireland government have decided not to come to the St. Patrick's Day celebrations?
They haven't, what?
They haven't come over, they're boycotting the St. Patrick's Day celebrations.
What are they boycotting?
They are talking about your position on Gaza as one of the reasons why they...
Oh, I haven't heard that. I really haven't heard that. Look.
Can I just say, I got to pay tribute to the President on the peace initiatives. The one thing we've learned in Ireland about the peace process that you've just spoken about, and I recall back in the early 90s, when the first tentative steps to get peace in Ireland, people criticised people like John Hume or people like Albert Reynolds, the then Taoiseach. But they kept going. And when we got that ceasefire in 1993, okay, it took a number of years to get the comprehensive peace settlement. But again, the guns more or less largely went silent. The war in Ukraine is a devastating war on young people. And I think that very simple, straightforward narrative is to be commended. We all have children. We're shocked at the prospect of young people losing their lives in that number. be they Ukrainian, be they Russian, whatever. Anything we can do to stop the violence, I think, is an extremely positive thing. And there will be all sorts of people having qualifications on it and all the rest of it. It's our job then to work on it and to try and build it, Europe, US and everything.
I will say, and thank you for that, but I will say, last week 2,500 young people died while we sit here and talk.
Yeah.
And while they talk about peace, but they've been talking about peace. This should have never happened. This war should have never happened. It would have never happened if I was president. That's what makes me more angry than anything else, because you've had far more people die than they report, than these people report, for whatever reason. But you had far more people. The numbers are far more devastating. You'll find that out someday. And it doesn't affect you very much. They're not Irish, and they're not from my country. They're from Russia mostly, almost all from Russia and from Ukraine. And people could say, why are you doing this? Why are you involved in that? Because 2,000 people a week are dying. And they have families, and they have mothers, and they have fathers, and they have sisters, and they have brothers and friends. And they're dying. And I've seen the pictures, the satellite pictures that we see all the time. And it looks like Gettysburg in its prime, because that was, they say, one of the most horrific battles ever. You have kids lying all over these fields that are dead, because the weapons today are unbelievable, between drones and various types of guns. I'm not even talking about beyond that with the big babies. You understand what I mean? I hate to even mention the name, the nuclear name. I hate to mention it. But you have weapons today that are so powerful. And I see kids every week. I see pictures of kids laying all over the field dead. They're dead. Beautiful kids. They're dead. And they're not from here and they're not from where you are, but he's working very hard. We're all working hard to get this thing finished. It's crazy over nothing, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's just a terrible situation. And I think we have a chance to get it done. So we've gotten half of it as a ceasefire, and if we can get Russia to stop, then we have a full ceasefire, and I think it'll never go back to war. I think something will
Ireland's relationship with Israel. There's been a lot of talk recently. The government are looking to bring in what's called the Occupied Territories Bill, which would ban goods from occupied territories. I know you met with Prime Minister Netanyahu recently. Did Ireland come up in that conversation? Did he raise any concerns about the Irish government?
One thing I'll tell you, you're not from Israel, that's for sure, huh? She's definitely not from Israel. It's an interesting question coming from you. We talk about everything. Israel has been under siege, as you can see, and they had to fight back. October 7th was a terrible thing. People don't like to mention it, but it was a terrible, terrible day in the life of the world. And it's amazing the way people don't mention that, but it was, I've never seen anything like it. Those are other clips I get to see. You know, as president, you get to see clips that you'd rather not see, but I see clips, and that was a terrible day for the world. And we're working hard with Israel. We're working hard to see if we can solve the problem. I will say I just saw 10 hostages, and they were treated really badly. They were really treated badly. I was shocked. I asked them, was there any kindness shown? They were in there. One was in there for 500 days. One was 323 days. I said, was there any, 10 of them, I said, was there any kindness displayed? Like, did they ever, like, say, don't worry, you'll be okay? Or give you a little wink, or give you, like, an extra slice of bread or something? And everybody said, all of these people said, zero. It was hatred. It was pure hatred. So, I mean, that's a very deep-seated problem.
Could you give the Taoiseach some advice? Ireland is in the midst of a housing crisis now, and I know you have a lot of experience as a businessman. How can the state build tens of thousands of houses at speed?
You know why they have a housing crisis? Because they're doing so well. They can't produce houses fast enough. That's a good problem, not a bad problem.
That's a pretty good answer, President.
No, it's true.
Will you put more tariffs on the EU, Mr. President?
Everybody should have that problem. That's okay.
Will you put more tariffs on the EU?
I know this gentleman. He'll get it solved.
Will you put more tariffs on the EU? Will you respond to their retaliation?
Oh, of course I'm going to respond.
You will retaliate with more tariffs.
The problem is our country didn't respond. Look, the EU was set up in order to take advantage of the United States.
including Ireland? Is Ireland taking advantage of the US?
Of course they are. I can't, I have great respect for Ireland and what they did. And they should have done just what they did. But the United States shouldn't have let it happen. We had stupid leaders. We had leaders that didn't have a clue. Or let's say they weren't business people, but they didn't have a clue what was happening. And all of a sudden, Ireland has, our pharmaceutical companies and this beautiful island of 5 million people has got the entire U.S. pharmaceutical industry in its grasp. And, you mentioned housing and you mentioned other things. I mean, I have property in Ireland, as you know, and I love it. It does great. But I'd like to see the United States not have been so stupid for so many years, not just with Ireland, with everybody. I looked at trade deals. I was telling the group yesterday, I looked at trade deals in term one. It's one of the reasons I decided I had to do this, because somebody had to straighten it out, and I didn't see anybody that was going to. I looked at trade deals that were so bad, I'd actually say, how is it possible that this could have happened? Who would have been so stupid to let these deals happen? For instance, when the pharmaceutical companies started to go to Ireland, I would have said, that's okay if you want to go to Ireland. I think it's great. But if you want to sell anything into the United States, I'm going to put a 200% tariff on you. So you're never going to be able to sell anything into the United States. You know what they would have done? They would have stayed here.
So do you are you planning to lower corporate taxes to match?
He's so lucky that I wasn't.
Are you planning to lower corporate taxes to match Ireland?
Well, we are planning to lower taxes, yeah, if the Democrats behave, but the Democrats have no clue. You saw that the other night during the speech. 2 young women were slaughtered by illegal aliens. 1 young man has very serious cancer and many other problems. We look at the people up there, they all had difficulty, very serious difficulty. But when we're talking about 2 young girls, beautiful young girls, Lake and Riley, you know the whole story. That evening was a disaster for the Democrats, in my opinion. And I would mention, and I'd see 2 mothers that were inconsolable as they stood, crying. Their daughters have been absolutely just destroyed, killed, viciously killed. And the young man who loves the police departments, he had cancer and has cancer, very bad cancer. There wasn't from people sitting there, Democrats, there wasn't a hand clap. Nobody stood. They were just stone-faced. These people are sick. There's something wrong with them. There was no standing for anybody. The only thing they liked is when they heard about the death taking place with Ukraine. They were happy about that. They were happy about that. Pocahontas was very happy. She's the one that was slapped. That's why I looked at her. I said, oh, it's Pocahontas. These people are sick. They don't know what's happening in the real world. The Democrats have to get their act together. And if they don't vote, then what you're going to do is you're going to have taxes that are going to go through the roof. You're going to have a very bad time. You're going to have some very bad things happen. And people are going to blame the Democrats. And Schumer is a Palestinian, as far as I'm concerned. He's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. He's a Palestinian. Okay.
On tariffs, there's been a lot of on and off, some inconsistency.
There's no inconsistency, only with NBC, which is one of the worst networks on television, by the way. Let me just tell you the inconsistency. I have the right to adjust. And I was called by the automakers as an example, General Motors, Ford, etc. The big 3, the big 4, and they asked me to do them a favor. Could I delay it for a period of 4 weeks so that they're not driven into a little bit of a disaster for them? They actually love what I'm doing, but they had a problem. And I'm not like a block that just, I won't delay. It's called flexibility. It's not called inconsistency. It's called flexibility. And I think you want me to be flexible too.
Is flexibility going to be your ongoing view toward?
Sure, I'll always have flexibility, but there will be very little flexibility once we start. April 2nd is going to be a very big day for the United States of America. The United States of America is going to take back a lot of what was stolen from it by other countries and by, frankly, incompetent U.S. leadership, grossly incompetent. I gave you an example of Ireland. I would have never let that happen. Impossible for that to have happened. But we're going to take back our wealth, and we're going to take back a lot of the companies that left are coming back. If you haven't read, we have the biggest computer chip company ever, has virtually all of the market. I didn't call them, they called me. And they called for two reasons. Number one, we had a great election of somebody that they want running the country. And we won in a big mandate. We won every swing state. We won by millions of votes. We won by 2,750 districts to 500. Think of that, 2,750 districts to 500. That's why the map, when you looked at it, was entirely red, meaning Republican. Not meaning communist. Meaning so anyway, look, this country needed somebody to defend it. It's this big, beautiful place that was being ripped off by illegal immigrants coming in from prisons, coming in from mental institutions, gang members, gang leaders, drug dealers, pouring into our country with the open borders. I am so angry at the last 4 years at what they've done to our country, what they've done to this country between inflation, but maybe the most that bothers me is that they would allow millions of people to come into our country that are stone cold murderers, killers, drug dealers, the worst gang members, the worst people allowed into our country. And we're now getting them out. We're going to get them out. We're getting them out. I want to thank Tom Homan, by the way. He's doing a great job. And I want to thank Kristi Noem, who's doing a fantastic job. This is a job that's so unnecessary. This should have never happened. This should have never happened. So we're bringing back our country in many ways, not only financially, and financially we'll be stronger than ever before. I think the markets are going to soar when they see what's happening. I'll tell you what, I'm called every day by numerous big companies. I spoke at the Business Roundtable yesterday. They had the largest attendance they've ever had. And these are only the CEOs and chairmen, but mostly the people that run, the boss, the people that run the top 150 companies. 150 people showed up. Every single company showed up. First time it ever happened. It's been around a long time. The biggest business leaders. We had a great discussion, went really well. And I want to tell you, there's tremendous optimism out there about our country in terms of regulations being cut, in terms of taxes being cut. And it would be great if the Democrats would do what's right. It would be great if the Democrats would do what's right for our country for a change, because they really are there. They've lost their way. They've lost their way. They think that people pouring into our country from prisons, jails, murders. We have 11,088 murderers that were allowed into, people that murdered people, half of which murdered more than one person in our country. We're getting them the hell out. But who would allow this to happen? Who would allow men to play in women's sports? And they're still fighting it. It's got to be a 95% issue. But they're on television this morning. I see this person, a Democrat, say, we should have the right. No. Men should not be, they're hurting women. They're hurting women very badly. They're hurting women. And they should not, and they're also demeaning women. But who would want these things? And everything's transgender. Everybody transgender. That's all you hear about. Now, that's why we won the election in record numbers. But very importantly, now it is what it is. The Democrats should get with us and come up with good tax policy so that Ireland and other countries can't take our businesses away from us. And he understands exactly. You guys did the right thing. I'm not upset with you. I think I respect what you've done. You've done a great job. But our people did a very bad job.
How advanced are your plans to try and bring some of those companies back to America? Will you be briefing?
Well, I'd love to have him back. I'd love to have him back, but he'll be fighting me on it.
What I would say, President, if I could 1 second, just make the point. It's a two-way street too, and we are investing a lot more in America now. And people may not realize, but Ryanair, one of our biggest airlines, for example, AirCap, they buy more. The two of them together buy more Boeing airplanes than anybody else outside of America. That's a little known fact. It doesn't turn up in the statistics, but Ryanair and AirCap, big aircraft leasing company, Irish company, have done great work with Boeing and huge investments over the last couple of years. You know, so and there's a lot of Irish companies here now, about 700 odd Irish companies based in America. Glanbia, you know, Smurford, Rock I was saying to you this morning, Vice President. A lot of them creating thousands of jobs in America, and it's only fair. I mean, that's correct.
That's right.
That's the way it should happen, and I think it's a very good relationship we have. It's a historic one. It's happened over time. We've added value to American companies. We've increased our value. They've got access to the European market, and they did all of that. I understand where you're coming from fully, but I think it's a relationship that we can develop and that will endure into the future, and will change, it will adapt, and you're evolving and you're doing things.
And they've done a very good job. Now, I just will say this, but with all that we've said, we can talk about Ryanair. There's a massive deficit. I don't mean by a little bit. I mean, there's a massive deficit that we have with Ireland and with other countries too. And we want to sort of even that out as nicely as we can, and we'll work together. We're going to work together great, but the deficit is massive. Will you hear this one?
You said earlier that it was now up to Russia in terms of the ceasefire.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do in terms of pressuring Russia or in terms of sanctions? Or what can you do?
We can, but I hope it's not going to be necessary. Sure, we can pressure. We can do that with Russia. Remember this, Russia took Georgia from Bush, right? They took Crimea from a man named Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, right? They tried to take the whole thing from Biden. They're going for the whole ball of wax. Who was the only one that never took anything from? Trump. And in fact, I'm the one that stopped Nord Stream 2, the pipeline, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world. I stopped it. It was dead. And then Biden got in and he approved it. Nobody mentions that. What I did to Russia was very tough. I was the toughest ever. But nope, they never took anything from me. They took them from Obama and Bush, and they took it from Sleepy Joe Biden. With Biden, they wanted to take the whole country, but I think I've stopped that, but we'll see. But yeah, there are things you could do that wouldn't be pleasant in a financial sense. I can do things financially that would be very bad for Russia. I don't want to do that because I want to get peace. I want to see peace, and we'll see. But in a financial sense, yeah, we could do things very bad for Russia. It would be devastating for Russia, but I don't want to do that because I want to see peace. And we're getting close to maybe getting something done. We've got Ukraine done, and as you know, I've always said that Ukraine might have been the more difficult party. You were here a week ago when some interesting things happened. I had somebody that didn't seem to want peace. Now he's agreed to peace. So we'll see what happens. Brian?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
First, we'll congratulate you on your lower inflation core rates.
Thank you.
Gas prices going down, airline prices going down. This is for the Irish gentleman here, if I can see him real quickly. Welcome, United States. You look great.
Thank you.
Nice suit.
Now you feel good. He knows.
What's coming next?
Ran on MAGA, Make America Great Again. If you could run on MEGA, Make Ireland Great Again, what would your #1 issue be for people in Ireland right now to make your country stronger? And I've got a 2-part question to that as well.
Yeah, the #1 issue in Ireland is housing, to be honest, and I think it was correctly pointed out. We've got to build more houses. We've got to build them faster to give the young people of Ireland an opportunity to afford to buy a house or to afford to rent a house. We have a lot of other good things happening. That's my #1 priority.
Wonderful.
Are you trying to
and my
service
second part
the
question to this, Ireland is known for very happy, fun-loving people, great attitude, many in this room right now that I've met. Why in the world would you let Rosie O'Donnell move to Ireland? I think she's going to lower your happiness level.
That's true. Thank you. I like that question.
Do
you know you have Rosie O'Donnell?
No.
Do you know who she is? Do you know who she is?
Yeah.
You better off not knowing.
Prime Minister,
Yeah.
are you expecting to inform the President your views on Gaza, considering that you have diametrically opposed positions on the state of Palestine? Your country is one of 3 in Europe that recognizes the state of Palestine. Are you expecting to discuss this with the President? Are you expecting to inform him?
I don't have to inform the President. He's very well clued into to the whole situation. We shared the President's, again, unrelenting focus on peace. And he's envoying the President himself, as soon as he came into office, went to get a ceasefire. We've been calling for a ceasefire for a long time. We wanted to consolidate the peace. That is our fundamental aim. We want the hostages out. I've been saying it from day one. It's a horrific thing to do to take someone as a hostage. And I went to Kibbutz Be'eri after October the 7th in solidarity with Israel, and that gets forgotten. And I went a week or two afterwards. I saw the kibbutz. It was a shocking thing to see, even though it was a week or two after the horror. It was a village, you could see life going on prior to the attack. It was something that will not leave me. And I've been interested in the Middle East for a long, long time. It's complex, and it's all of that. But we do desperately need hostages out, all of them. It's been far too long. Let me finish. And then we need a ceasefire. We need to consolidate that. We need a surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Because again, there's too many children and too many people starving and so on. Just too many. And it's that humanitarian impulse is what motivates the Irish in respect of its views. And I've always been of the view, it's been our view that a two-state solution would be ideal. It's become much more challenging and difficult as time has moved on. But that has always been our position. But it's genuinely to have people, because we've gone through this. We discussed this prior to you coming in. We've been through some of this. People hating each other, terrible acts of violence carried out on each other. We came through it. It's our earnest hope that Arab and Jewish people can live side by side. And I've met with people, parents of children who were killed on both sides, called Parent Circle in Israel, and they work to try and bring people together. It's difficult work.
What about the President's plans to expel Palestinians out of Gaza? Are you discussing that with him and giving him your...
Nobody's expelling any Palestinians. I don't know. Who are you with?
I'm in Voice of America, sir.
Oh, no wonder. Okay, Voice of
He should express how he feels about the President just saying that he would like to take back US companies, pharma companies based in Ireland.
Well, I think the pharmaceutical companies in Ireland are doing very well, as the President has outlined. Again, I think it's about that two-way partnership. I understand fully where the President is coming from. I think there's actually room. Now, we can discuss all this. I think there's room for those companies to grow in America. And many of them, by the way, have already announced fairly significant manufacturing investments now.
It's true, just recently.
Like people like Eli Lilly, for example, who have been a long-standing presence in Ireland since the 1970s. I spoke to the CEO recently.
He's great.
Great guy. And he's announced, I think, about a $50 billion investment in America.
New plans.
But there's big investment, they've had big investment in Ireland. Ireland has served them well too, The workforce is very strong. It's an educated workforce. They delivered well. During COVID-19, a number of CEOs said to me, a lot of the plants in Ireland were the only plants that never closed for a single day during COVID. Not a single day. Productivity is good and so on like that. But look, there be swings around.
Mr. President, thank you so much. You spoke to Vladimir Putin for quite a while on the phone. So I want to know your assessment. When you take this deal to him now, how do you assess the chances of Putin?
I have no assessment, and I don't go by chances. I think it makes sense for Russia. A lot of downside for Russia, too. And we have a very complex situation solved on one side, pretty much solved. We've also discussed land and other things that go with it. We're not just doing it and saying ceasefire. We don't know what's happening. We know the areas of land we're talking about, whether it's pulled back or not pulled back. We've discussed a lot of the details of what has to go because we don't want to be wasting time. We don't want to be wasting time while people are dying. I mean, as we're sitting here, you probably had 2 people die on that very open field. It's dead flat. It's great farmland, and it's dead flat. There's no protection. The only thing that stops a bullet is a human body. And these are bodies that are young people, and they're stopping a lot of bullets because a lot of bullets are flying across those level fields. Dead flat, no protection whatsoever. It is a disaster. And so I hope he's going to have a ceasefire.
You are using the American leverage to get a lot of political issues.
Well, I don't want to get into that, but if I had to, I'm the only one that's dealt with them successfully. Everyone else, I went through it. Bush didn't deal with them successfully, dealt with them terribly, got ripped off. And Obama was a disaster. You know, they have with Obama, he gave them sheets, and I gave them anti-tank missiles. You know that, right? It's called Javelin. You know the Javelin? I'm the one that gave them the Javelins. People don't say that. And then they say, oh, Trump has a great relationship with Russia. I'm the one that gave him the Javelins. Obama gave him sheets. That's an expression. He gave sheets, I gave javelins. So,
Mr. President, how worried should the undocumented Irish be about your administration that you don't round them up and send them home again?
Oh, I think the Irish love Trump. We won the Irish with a tremendous amount of vote. I want to thank you very much. We won in the 80s with Irish. I got the Irish vote. I think I have it locked up pretty good, unless I did something very stupid, like drained your company, your wonderful place of all of its companies. If I drained Ireland of all of the companies, maybe I'd lose the Irish vote. I don't know. But right now, no. I love it. I've been there many times, as you know, yes. And we don't want to do anything to hurt Ireland. We want to, but we do want fairness, and he understands that.
The markets,
no, that's enough, Kelly. Thank you.
President, was there anything that the teacher could say to you today that would dissuade you from going ahead with the
I can't hear.
Mr. President, it's Irish American Appreciation Month you've named there. Who's your favourite Irish person?
Oh, there's so many. Are you kidding me? Well, I do happen to like your fighter. He's got the best tattoos I've ever seen. I don't know if I'm a big, but that.
Conor McGregor.
Boy, you have. Well, Conor's great, right? You know, talking about Conor, but you have a lot of great Irish fighters, actually. Great fighters. I don't know what that is, but Ireland's always had a lot of good fighters. You know why? Because they're tough people. They're smart people and they're passionate people. And they really have been, over the years, so many. I think your father was a great fighter, right?
He was, you did.
Wow,
Right.
And yet, look at you, you're so smooth and so...
He was a very good defensive boxer.
He was a really good...
He was a good boxer, yeah.
Right,
He boxed for Ireland. And
yeah. That means you genetically, I'm not going to mess around.
Do you follow any Irish golfers?
Okay, let's, a couple of more from somebody that didn't ask a question. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, should Apple go back to the US from Ireland?
Who?
Apple?
Oh, Apple's been treated very badly. Look, Apple had tremendously bad luck. I thought they had a very good lawsuit, but they lost.
We fought with them.
$16 billion. $16 billion, and they're after a lot of our American companies. See, that's what's unfair. It's the European Union. I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming the European Union. The European Union's gone after our companies, and Apple's a great company, and they have to give $17 billion on a lawsuit that I didn't think was a good lawsuit. No, that's not good. No, the European, we have a problem with the European Union. They don't take our farm products. They don't take our cars. We take millions of cars, BMWs and Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagens and everything. We take millions of cars. I said to Angela Merkel at the time, I said, Angela, how many Chevrolets do we have in the middle of Munich? Why, none. I said, you're right, we have none. That's the way it is, we have none. No, I'm not happy with the European Union, I want to tell you. And,
will you put tariffs
and
on
we're going to
cars?
win that. We're going to win that financial battle. It's a financial
battle. European cars, Mr. President? Tariffs on European cars, is that something you're now considering?
Oh, absolutely, I will do that. Yeah.
Mr. President,
Think of it, they have millions of cars coming in, millions and millions of cars. One of probably the largest. Japan's very big too, but and they don't accept our cars. We make great cars. They don't have our cars, but we have their cars. They don't have our farm products. We have the greatest farmers in the world. They don't accept our farm products, and we accept theirs. So, you know, things are going to change unless they do what they have to do, and they know what they have to do. This is not going to be a tough battle. In my opinion, not going to be tough. Just like when Ontario charged us, everybody said, oh, they just charged. I said, this will be won in 1 hour. And they announced what we were going to do, and they withdrew their little threat. And what they don't say in Canada is that 270%. Have you ever heard that? We have tariffs on dairy products from Canada of 270%, going up to 400%. You never hear that. Canada's absolutely one of the worst. And we, when I say worst in terms of charging tariffs. The dairy products, they charge our farmers 240, 250, 270, and 400%. Okay? Think of that for dairy product. And we charge them like peanuts. You know why? Because we've been improperly run for so many years. I had that all settled in my first term. But then, of course, Biden, you know, he let everything go to hell. One of the things we did is we took from China hundreds of billions of dollars, and I have great respect for President Xi. But he understood that. He understood it was a one-way street, and you can't have a one-way street. Okay? One more question.
Can you say which countries you might target in your next travel ban?
Say it.
Can you say which countries you might target in your next travel ban?
Wouldn't that be a stupid thing for me to say? I said, which countries am I going to target for the next travel ban?
As part of the,
Can you believe somebody would ask that question?
as part of the
Tariffs specifically you're going to put on Ireland?
Well, we're going to talk. We're going to be talking really to the European Union. You know, I will tell you this one little. We'll end it with this. So I have a property, a big property in Ireland that you know well. It's one of the most highly rated hotels in all of Europe. It's beautiful. Doonbeg. It's a beautiful 600 acres on the ocean, and everybody knows it. And we have a beautiful hotel. And I was going to do a project there, a big expansion of the place. This was when I was a civilian, before the presidency, before I even thought about the presidency. But I was going to do a really beautiful expansion of because it does very well. And I got the approvals from Ireland so quickly. They were so professional. They wanted it. You know, it's economic development, it's jobs, it's construction jobs, a big expansion, beautiful expansion. But I was told something that bothered me. They said, sir, you also have to get approved by the European Union. I said, why do I have to go to the European Union to expand a hotel that's in Ireland? They said, well, that's the way it is. I say, well, shouldn't that go fast? They said, no, it'll take at least 7 years. You gave me the approval in about 4 weeks. It was a beautiful professional. If you took 4 years, you wouldn't have done a better job. You know, everything was done environmentally, everything. There's no reason to take very long. I had everything from Ireland in 4 weeks. And then I hired somebody. He said the process will be from 5 to 7 years. And I said, oh, really? And then I found out that they weren't playing games. Now think about how bad that is for your country. So that was my first experience with the European Union. And I dropped the project. I just said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go 7 years to expand something. But I have to, I'll hand it to Ireland. You were so professional, so good. But I don't know why. European Union had to approve it. Yeah. And with them, it was deal. And that's the European Union. So it was a very bad experience I had.
Just say, President, you have the distinction of being, I think, the only president that has physically invested in Ireland.
That's
through
good.
your Doonbeg.
And it's been a good investment.
And I mean, for anybody, you should go there. It's just stunning.
I love this.
No, I mean, even if you don't play golf, I mean, it is a stunning landscape.
Yeah.
Your people have restored it very well, and our people are going to continue to work with you on that piece to do it all sort of effectively and so on like that.
They've had a great relationship.
But it is and the local people, my local councillor Rita McInerney texted me last week to say, tell President Trump to thank his family for the way they've worked with the local community and for the work that they've done.
I love Rory. I think Rory's great. He's a great golfer. He just won 2 weeks ago. He's a great guy. I played golf with him 3 weeks ago. And he's really a fantastic player. He's in good form, too. When he played with me, he played very well, I can tell you. No, Rory certainly is one of the favorites. He's always going to be one of them. He's a very talented guy. He's a very good person, too.
Are you planning to visit Cuba, Mr. President?
I will. I'll get there sometime. I hope soon. In fact, if we meet, we'll meet at Doonbeg. Okay, but I hope to be able to get there.
Mr. President, does America have a future in NATO?
What's it?
Does America have a future in NATO?
Well, NATO has to treat us fairly. If they pay their bills and if they do what they're supposed to do. When I first got involved with NATO, as you know, they weren't paying their bills. There were 28 countries, and most of them weren't paying. And I got them to pay. And they paid billions and billions of dollars. I made a certain statement that I'm not going to be involved with NATO unless you're going to pay your bills. And I was asked a question, if we don't pay, are you going to help us? I said, no, if you don't pay, you're saying you're delinquent. A real estate term. You're delinquent. You're not paying your rent. You're not paying your bills. If you're not paying your bills, I'm not going to help. And everybody we took in, your Secretary General will tell you, he was very generous to me. He said, I've never seen anything like it. Money came in by the billions and billions and billions of dollars, and NATO became much stronger. Now, NATO's expended a lot of that money in fighting this horrible war, and it's too bad they had to do that. But they had the money from me. I was the one that got people to pay. The countries, most of the countries were not paying, or they were paying a very small amount. So we'll see. But NATO can be a force for the good, absolutely.
Would you like to see Ireland join NATO, Mr. President?
That's up to Ireland.
Well, do you think Ireland and the EU are too close? Do you think that perhaps, like you said...
We are very close.
No, Ireland and the EU. Do you think there's too close a relationship there? Do you think there needs to be a separation? Like you said, if you can't get planning permission when you can get it in Ireland, but you can't get it in the EU, do you think...
Well, look, I can just tell you about my personal experience, that Ireland treated me very well, and the EU was terrible, and they stopped really a magnificent addition. It wasn't a big deal from the standpoint of the world. It wasn't like the things we're talking about now, but it would have been a very beautiful addition. And they stopped it, which is bad for Ireland. And I don't know why. I don't know why it would take 5 to 7 years to get something approved, but that's what it was. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're headed out. Thank you. All right, headed out right behind you, right behind you. Right through this door. Thanks, guys. This way, here's the president.
Thank you. I should have.
Thank you.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
Boxes everywhere. And this is going to be Addie's room.
I think you're really gonna like it.
I hope so. Yeah.
I know this road is there for me.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
The way it's down by the river.
I got this. Okay.
If I'm really free, take me down to the river and wash me.
For the first time in 4 months, inflation in the U.S. cooled off. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Consumer Price Index was 2.8% for the year-long period that ended in February. That's down from the 3.3% nearly yearly rate reported in January. Economists say lower gas and grocery prices were major factors that helped bring down inflation. Egg prices have increased over 10% from a month ago. But according to Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, the prices dropped after the department announced a $1 billion plan to address the egg crisis. Canada will impose over $20 billion worth of tariffs on U.S. goods effective tomorrow morning. The move comes in response to President Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs that took effect today. They imposed 25% duties on shipments of steel and aluminum, with no countries excluded.
Today, I am announcing that the Government of Canada, following a dollar-for-dollar approach, will be imposing, as of 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, March 13th, 2025, 25% reciprocal tariffs on an additional $29.8 billion of imports from the United States.
Canada is not the one that is ultimately starting this war. President Trump's tariffs against you are causing that. And there are no winners in a trade war.
Canada's finance minister says the counter tariffs will target steel and aluminum products, as well as additional imported U.S. goods. On Monday, Canada's incoming Prime Minister Mark Carney said he could not speak with Trump until taking office. Canada is the biggest foreign supplier of steel and aluminum to the United States. In Australia, the government was disappointed not to win an exemption from the new tariffs, something Trump said last month he would seriously consider. However, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said it would be counterproductive for Australia to respond with tariffs of its own. Other countries facing a significant hit from the Trump tariffs include Brazil, Mexico, and South Korea. However, the new charges have been welcomed by the Steel Manufacturers Association, which said the measures would supercharge domestic production. Investors are less sure, with U.S. stocks shedding more than $4 trillion in value over recent weeks amid trade concerns. The European Union also announced new tariffs on U.S. industrial and agricultural products today. The move comes within hours of the Trump administration's 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports taking effect. The EU measures will apply to goods worth approximately $28 billion. They will affect not only steel and aluminum, but also textiles, home appliances, and agricultural products. Among the specific items targeted are motorcycles, bourbon, peanut butter, and jeans. The tariffs primarily target Republican states, hitting soybeans in House Speaker Mike Johnson's Louisiana. They'll also affect beef and poultry in Kansas and Nebraska. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized the EU remains open to negotiation. The British government today called the Trump administration's tariffs on steel and aluminum disappointing, but the UK says it won't retaliate.
On the question of tariffs, obviously, like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed, but we will keep all options on the table.
Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds did not rule out future tariffs on U.S. imports. He says he will continue to engage closely and productively and defend UK business interests. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has worked to build strong ties with President Trump, hoping to avoid the tariffs. Trump and Starmer said last month their governments would work on sealing a long, elusive U.S.-UK trade deal. Okay, all eyes are on Senate Democrats' next move. Will the caucus give the GOP-controlled Senate the votes needed to avert a government shutdown by Friday? Or is it more important to stand up against the Trump administration's spending plans? NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
We're going to wait and see what.
As of Wednesday morning, Senate Democrats lack a clear strategy on how to handle the House-passed short-term government funding resolution. It extends government funding until September, while slashing $13 billion from domestic funds and boosting the Pentagon's budget by $6 billion. House Speaker Mike Johnson secured the votes with support from all but one Republican.
The bill is passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
After his success, House lawmakers wiped their hands and left town for the week, ramping up the pressure on the Senate to act.
And it falls on the desk of Chuck Schumer. He is the leader of the Democrats on that side, and he must determine whether he wants to fund the government, do the responsible thing, or whether he wants to shut the government down. And I certainly hope that there are enough Democrats in the Senate who have a conscience who will do the right thing by the American people.
A few Senate Democrats have expressed openness to reluctantly supporting the resolution.
I would not vote to shut the government down or withhold my vote.
Yes.
And I don't know what my colleagues are going to do, but I am describing that we can't shut the government down to claim to save it.
Obviously, I'm concerned about what this administration will do with regards to bringing people back to work. If there was a government shutdown, we could wind up in a situation where maybe this administration decides to leave parts of the government that provide valuable services to the American people closed permanently.
Senator Angus King, an independent who caucuses with Democrats, said allowing a shutdown might give Trump the upper hand. To avert a shutdown, 8 Democrats would need to jump on board with the Republican plan. That's including one vote to make up for Republican Rand Paul's expected no vote. Senate Democrats are expected to meet at lunchtime to strategize how to move forward. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. My name is Ariel, and my entire life changed when I took a chance and I got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges.
So Ariel, we made this yearbook for you. It has notes from all the people that are here. Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
Kids love it. Parents trust it.
Obviously.
Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Gyeonggi Campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.
Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more.
Wow.
All while having fun.
Perfect.
Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
President Trump and House Speaker Mike Johnson are hosting Irish Prime Minister Micheal Martin at the Friends of Ireland luncheon. The two leaders are also expected to participate in a St. Patrick's Day reception later today. Take a look.
Congress, and is considered the father of our American Navy. He later became the first Navy captain to seize a British ship. We had three Irishmen who signed our Declaration of Independence: George Taylor, Matthew Thornton, and James Smith. One of the most recognized houses in the world was designed by James Hoban, an Irishman from County Kilkenny, when he designed our White House. And 23 of the 45 men who have served as United States president have Irish heritage, many of them proudly. And same for hundreds of congressmen and senators who have walked these hallowed halls. Today we celebrate their contributions and the truly special relationship among the United States and Ireland and the Irish people. So join me in a toast. Here I am again without a glass. I'm supposed to be toasting. I'm going to grab one. Thank you. A glass of water, no less. It works as well. And the toast is in, hold on, man, I am really messing this up. But we're all friends here. And I don't know where it went. All right, I'm just going to toast. It was a beautiful toast, trust me, it was great. To the United States, to Ireland, to this beautiful relationship, and to all who aspire to be Irish around the world. Cheers. Solange, that's right. That's what I'm supposed to say. I have the pleasure of introducing our own head of state here. This luncheon offers an opportunity for both Americans and the Irish to reflect on our past and on our future. In 1981, Senator Ted Kennedy and Senator Daniel Moynihan and Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill started this great tradition, the Congressional Friends of Ireland. They aimed to celebrate their shared Irish heritage, deepen ties between our two nations, and promote peace and reconciliation in Northern Ireland. In 1983, the Friends of Ireland luncheon was born when President Ronald Reagan, of course of proud Irish heritage, and the Taoiseach visited Capitol Hill to celebrate Irish heritage and St. Patrick's Day. This lunch was the embodiment of that, of charity and friendship across political differences, and it has led to real-world international diplomatic successes. Many historians credit the advocacy of the Friends of Ireland caucus as essential in the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. And we welcome continued efforts to promote and preserve this agreement and promises of a bright future for the Friends of Ireland. Last year, I hosted this luncheon alongside President Biden. Our political differences were on stark display. It was obvious, that's an understatement. But he was our incumbent Democratic president, and I was the Republican House Speaker. And still, we shared laughs at the table at this event. It was one of the rare moments of the year where we could do that. That's what this celebration is all about. We laid down our swords, and in the spirit of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, we broke bread together and celebrated what binds us all together, rather than what divides us. This year is a little different, of course. The political dynamics on Capitol Hill are extraordinarily different. President Trump is back in the White House. Republicans control both chambers of Congress. Here in our form of government, we call that unified government. A year ago, people thought I was crazy for predicting that we would be here today, but we are. And we're facing a new dawn for America and our bilateral relationships. And I know that we can look forward to working together to promote and preserve our friendships. It's an important, informative time around the world to do that. So in keeping with the proud U.S.-Ireland tradition and the spirit of the Friends of Ireland luncheon, it's my great privilege to present the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor. I've been here just about every time. We had one that was terminated because of a thing called COVID. I don't know if anybody's heard of that, but that was never pleasant. And we would have been together twice, but we had COVID interrupted twice, and I appreciate seeing you again, however. And you've done a fantastic job. We very much appreciate you being here. And I also want to thank my new friends from Northern Ireland for being here, who I just met. Thank you very much. Great honor. And I must say they spoke very well of you. So that's good. That's good. And great to be with you. And thank you to Speaker Johnson, and thank you to all of the members of Congress who are here, quite a few, most of which are Irish, most of whom are Irish. And we welcome Taoiseach, and I love the name because Micheal, but it's Michael. I said, how many people call you Michael? It's exactly Michael. I said, he said, about 50%. I said, do you get upset when they do? He said, no, but I'm going to call you Micheal because that's the way it is. Martin, who has really been terrific. I've been with him quite a bit. I've spoken to him quite a bit, and we're going to have no problems. And his wife, Mary, we welcome you to America. Fantastic people. And it's really a wonderful annual tradition being here. We're also grateful to be joined by Irish Ambassador to the United States, Geraldine Byrne Nason. Where's Geraldine? Hi, Geraldine. Thank you very much. And the entire Irish delegation. And I know we're a little bit, everybody's a little bit late today, but that's okay because we're celebrating the Irish, and I think it's okay we're a little bit late. I also want to congratulate a friend of mine, Ed Walsh. He's a great golfer. He's a championship golfer, actually. Not quite as good as Rory, but that's okay. But he's right up there. He's won many club championships, and he's one of the best golfers you'll ever see. And congratulations, boy, you're going to have fun over there. He's going to be the ambassador to Ireland. So congratulations, Ed. Well, maybe it is thanks to me, but you're going to have a good time. You're going to represent us well. He can do most of his business on the golf course, too. That's so nice. But he's got the best job of anybody. And I really appreciate so many of my friends being here. So many great friends are here. This afternoon, we're gathered to celebrate the deep and abiding ties of history, family, and friendship that bind together Ireland and the United States of America. The Irish-American patriots have been part of our national history in our country's earliest days. Amazing history they have with our country. Irish Americans fought heroically in our war for independence, served with honor in the crucible of the Civil War, and won fame and valor among Theodore Roosevelt's famous Rough Riders. They were Rough Riders. By some estimates, more than 2,000 Irish American warriors have earned the Congressional Medal of Honor. This is an amazing statistic, because who would ever think that's even possible? It's more than 50% of the medals of honor were won by the Irish. I'm going to have to check that. That sounds like, that's an awfully good statistic. We're going to have to check what's going on over there, huh? But that's an amazing statistic, actually, 50%. This includes the great Audie Murphy, the most decorated enlisted soldier in American history, whose service in the Second World War earned a Medal of Honor, 2 Silver Stars, a Bronze Star, 3 Purple Hearts, and the Legion of Merit. Quite a person. Became a movie actor. The movie actor stuff wasn't quite as good as the soldier that he did, but he was great. Became a very famous person, actually. America has truly been blessed by the courage and unstoppable spirit of the Irish. Over the generations, Americans of Irish ancestry have helped build our railroads and raise our cities and man our factories, enrich our culture with art and music and literature. We see that all over. And protect our communities by joining the proud tradition of Irish American police officers and firefighters. And few have done more for the Stars and Stripes than the sons and daughters of the Emerald Isle. And I can tell you, I know your father was a great boxer, and they have a lot of good fighters. I know so many Irish fighters, they like to fight, and they're damn good at it too. But his father was a great fighter, actually, so that means genetically I'm not going to mess around with you. You understand? I'm a believer in that. But as you know, on Monday, millions of Americans will celebrate St. Patrick's Day. We love St. Patrick's Day, maybe especially in New York. Hundreds of thousands of citizens decked in Irish green will parade through the streets of Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, and of course New York, a sight that I've witnessed many, many times. In Manhattan, the people will stream up Fifth Avenue and march past the magnificent, I see it so much, and I love it, especially when you're looking down upon St. Patrick's Cathedral, because it's, to me, one of the most beautiful cathedrals in the world. And it's a monument not only to God, but also to the patron saint of Ireland, patron saint. It's really an extraordinary testament to the connection between our two countries, that after more than 1,500 years, the shining legacy of St. Patrick still rouses city blocks half the world away. Think of that, and fills our people with incredible love and pride. We have a lot of pride in that cathedral. That cathedral is something, to me, so beautiful. I think maybe my favorite, they have larger, you know. It's very large, but they have larger, but I think it's truly one of the most beautiful. The Irish spirit is truly alive and thriving in America, and as we see today, the friendship between our nations is strong, and it's really unbreakable, and that includes all of you, you know. It's all of you. We love you all. So, Taoiseach, I want to just thank you once again for being here. It's an honor, and hopefully we're going to be doing this at least 3 more times, okay? We're going to be doing this 3 more times, at least. And when I say at least, they go absolutely crazy. So, thank you very much for being here. Mary, thank you very much for being here. It's a great honor. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Stay with us and we'll bring you more news right after this break.